Folks, we now have a quorum. Welcome to the June 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. We've got a number of formalities, few actually. First is we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan. We go around.
You want to just cue us up?
Yeah, Hans, you're on.
Okay, Hans Van Lingen.
Jerry Burke.
Wendy Garpo.
And Steve Ibis, Conservation Agent.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now for the agenda. First on the other thing is we're being recorded as part of the open meeting law. So if anyone speaks, and everyone is invited to speak and encouraged to speak, ask questions, make comments, but we do ask that you identify yourself when you do so for the record. First on the agenda is the Milton Land Conservation Trust. And I think everyone received in their packet, and for the benefit of the public, we received a letter in May, on May 19th, from Ted Wendell and John Cronin, who are trustees of the Milton Land Conservation Trust. And members of the public will recall that a year ago, the Milton Land Conservation Trust decided to divest itself of its holdings here in Milton and to transfer the monitoring and stewardship of the lands in which they held the interest to the Wildlands Trust, some to the Wildland Trust, which is a well-established conservation trust. It's based in Plymouth. They have a good, strong administrative staff. They're well-funded, and they have the ability to monitor the lands of which they are stewards. Another set of parcels of land were conveyed to the Milton Conservation Commission. And along with those, they donated $12,000 to us last year, which we have put in a fund for the benefit of preserving the resources and the open spaces and the natural resources. And we received a letter, and I'll read it to you. It says, as you know, the Milton Land Conservation Trust is closing. The trustees, John Cronin and myself, who is Ted Wendell, dispersing the final funds in the checking account and enclose a check for $811.97 for the Conservation Commission as the last act of the trust. Many thanks for carrying on the work of the trust initiated. Sincerely, Ted Wendell. And both Ted and John Cronin are longtime trustees, and they're also joined for a number of decades by Peter Jeffries, who, when he left the town as a resident, he resigned his trusteeship, but he stayed on as a consultant to the Conservation Trust. So to those three, we extend our sincere appreciation, and I would entertain a motion to pass a resolution thanking those three for their service to the town. And actually the trust itself goes back to the 1960s when it was first formed. And at one point, a tremendous number of parcels of land were put into its care and custody to preserve the open spaces. They are still maintained as such, and they've done a tremendous service to the citizens of Milton and the citizens of the world. So I entertain a motion to pass a resolution saluting those three, as well as the grantors of the Milton Land Conservation Trust, and thanking them for their generosity, both in lands and in funds.
Absolutely. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion among the commissioners or comments from members of the public? Hearing none or seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's a unanimous resolution. And Steve, would you add that to the minutes? And we'll type up some kind of a letter to go to the three trustees, or two trustees and one former trustee, Peter Jeffries. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Number 2 on the agenda is informational. This is Brook Road and Dudley Lane. This is Eversource. And good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Denise Bartone. I apologize that Mr. Waldrop is not here this evening. He's on vacation. So well-deserved vacation as well. And also with me is Ms. Kaplan from Eversource.
I have to excuse myself, sort of, as an employee of Eversource. So
okay,
I'm just going to mute myself, I guess. And
okay, thank you.
So I'd like to thank you for having us this evening. Honestly, we're just here for follow-up from the last time that we were in your presence in May 12th. And honestly, we had sent in a letter on June 11th that outlines some of the additional BMPs that we intend to employ at the substation that's located at the intersection of Brook Road and Dudley Lane. More specifically, we're looking to place additional wood barriers along the ground surface to properly demarcate the limits of parking and install signage to ensure that crews are aware of the presence of adjacent wetlands. So, honestly, we just want to submit this letter, just follow up, let you know what our intent is to do. We recognize the Commission's concerns, and also we are committed to protecting our environmental resources, as well as providing safe and reliable energy to the town of Milton. So if you have any questions with regard to our letter, we're here to answer.
Sure, I can make a few comments. First, thanking you for the letter and the follow-up after our meeting in May. The first one is that my first point is that I appreciate the reference to the COVID pandemic and the need for social distancing, but I don't think that's an appropriate reference here in this case. This is a relatively small parcel of land. The trucks are very close together. I've been there, their presence a number of times, 4 times, and they're parked extremely tightly. It's probably somewhere between a half an acre there and maybe more than that, but not much more. The town has very graciously granted access to the Public Works, the Department of Public Works yard, which is probably 7 to 8 acres. You could park the trucks there and they'd have 50 yards between them. So from a social distancing perspective, I don't place much value in the reference to the pandemic. Secondly, you referenced the emergency response. And I think we discussed that in May, and I think the consensus among the members of the commission was that we understand completely if there's an emergency, then, in order to preserve and protect the power source, and then we would understand that. But you're asking here for a permanent, you make reference to emergency, but you're asking for a permanent permission to place them there. And then go on to, my third point is, let me go back to the emergency component. For those that don't know, the DPW yard is about 1.5 miles, and it's probably equidistant between the expressway and 128, the old 128, 93, as it circles around Milton. So I don't understand the reference to emergency response because you're probably 2.5 minutes away from this particular location. And this is a very, very sensitive area. There's water essentially surrounding, not just wetlands. I mean, there's actual water surrounding the platform that holds the 2 transformers there. My next point is that you make reference that this is not an activity as defined in the Wetlands Protection Act. And I do not agree with that. And you actually quote in defining what an activity is, and it includes the discharge of pollutants. It remains a fact that trucks, particularly those with hydraulic equipment on it, drop oil. That's the discharge of the pollutant. So I take issue with your suggestion that it is not it's not an activity. I believe it is. It discharges oil into the wetlands, and we are within, I'll guess, and you can correct me, 5 feet of the actual hydraulic, not the hydraulic soil, but the hydric soil. You can't get closer to the wetlands. And actually, in my pictures that I took and sent, it's part of the public record, you can see that the backs of the truck actually extend over the hill, the short hill that goes down, and we're talking 2 or 3 feet over the wetlands. So I would suggest that hydric soil probably goes right up to the area that it's parked where the tires are. I acknowledge that there may be some 3 or 4 feet difference, but we have a 25-foot non-disturbance zone, and I think that is an activity. So I take issue with the rationale for it. I do support and recognize the importance of protecting our power source, and I do support and recognize the need in emergency situations. But for the many years that I've lived in Milton, which is a long time, trucks weren't there. This is of recent vintage that they've been parked there. When we asked that there was some delay in moving them out, they were actually moved out at one time, then they came back. And when we made an issue, and Matt did a great job when he first, when he was first informed of this, I thought he did a great job responding and took advantage of the town's gracious offer of a place to park them, and did move them. So we salute him for that expedient response. But having said that, I would not support permission to grant permanent parking there, which over the last 5 decades that I've been in the area, they haven't been there. And I think that the fact that it's not an emergency situation because you're at most 1.5 miles away, maybe a 2-minute, maybe 2.5-minute ride, and you get immediate access in the Public Works Department. It provides for social distancing if that's a concern. So I would not be in a position to support permission to permanently park those large trucks that drop oil themselves, and then at least 3 of the 4 trucks there had hydraulic booms attached to them. And we all know from our construction experience that hydraulic lines pop and discharge oil. That's why we have spill protection plans, because it's a known risk of hydraulic equipment. So I don't support that, but that's a personal position. So I'll pass the torch to the others on the commission, and they can state their position. We don't have a motion before us. The enforcement order was resolved. I think that's all behind us. And I'm not sure if you're filing we don't have a notice of intent before us. We really don't have anything other than a public discussion of this. But so I'm just alerting you that my position would be opposed to providing permanent parking at that site. Hans, Wendy, Jerry, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, have you, on the picture that you attached to your letter, I'm assuming that that's Fontbonne Academy's parking lot right there in the corner?
It's near to that, yes.
Yeah, and I know that we suggested possibility of reaching out to Fontbonne Academy for permission to park trucks there. Has that taken place? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I could respond to that.
I think the question was directed to you, Denise.
Certainly. I'm used to going through the chair. I'm sorry.
No, that's for that. I appreciate the formality, but please go ahead and answer.
Sure. So to my knowledge, not that I'm aware of, but please understand our reasoning for wanting to park our own equipment on our property. First off, it's accessibility at 24/7, especially during storms, during heat waves, at those opportunities, at those times where we need to get access immediately. And this is our property, so of course, this is why we would consider parking on our property. In addition, we are concerned about security. Security is very important to us, the security of our crews, the security of our equipment. We don't want to park our vehicles or our equipment unattended for long periods of time. If they're being staged for a storm, ahead of a storm, we may stage our vehicles there, let our crews get some rest before we're up and working for 16-hour shifts. So again, we like to have a secure facility that, of course, it's under our control. We have a very robust, secure system and security team that works for all of our facilities, including our smaller substations. So it's also our own liability by us parking and having our equipment on our property. We are not putting any of our own equipment at some sort of someone's liability, perhaps if they're broken into or something. We would not want to encumber some other private property or even the DPW in that instance. We did speak to the town administrator and the DPW director, and they completely understood our need for access and our safety and security concerns, as well as how we can possibly come to a resolution with the commission completely understanding that the need to protect those wetlands that are adjacent, surrounding our substation. That's, you know, it's a paved parking area. And what we're providing is more of a visual demarcation for our crews so that they are not perhaps backing up a little bit further, as you described, over that slope, as well as putting signage out there so that our crews are aware that there are wetland resources there. And we are all trained to protect our environmental resources. So by having a visual cue will also assist our crews in maintaining that distance.
I should mention one other thing, Denise, and that is we have I sometimes use the term boilerplate and I shouldn't. It's a standard condition when we issue an order of conditions, and that is that the applicant or the contractor for the applicant cannot park overnight within our buffer zone, and they cannot refuel within our buffer zone. And that's within the 100-foot buffer. And we also have a 25-foot zone. I don't think you could move those trucks 25 feet away in any direction to get them 25 feet away from the wetlands. It's too small. Jerry, I don't know, that's near your house, Jerry Burke. I don't know if you're familiar with the area or if you've been in that area.
I am. I've walked by it. I've never gone down in there. It is a tight area. I know that that Fontbonne Academy has no gates. It's not locked. I just thought it was worth viewing. You did make a good point about liability, but that's something you can work out with the owner of the property. It is a secure location, and it's 25 feet away. And like I said, there's access to Fontbonne Academy. There are no gates at either end on Adams Street or on Center. But yeah, you made some points, but I guess I thought that there was going to be someone reaching out to either them or on the corner of Adams and Squantum Street. There's another business with a large parking area. Again, that's fairly secure and no gates or anything like that. Even the town has a gate, so that poses a little bit of a challenge if you go to the DPW. But I just thought I'd throw it out there. But.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to bring up, I know that you had mentioned some points about COVID. Mr. Waldrop, I know, brought that up at the last meeting. He is being very honest in an effort to maintain distance between our crews. We have a supervisor and bucket trucks. Typically, we have 2 people in a crew and a bucket truck. And under these circumstances, we had to separate them. So we have a single crew person in a bucket truck. So thus the number of bucket trucks necessary. We've taken this pandemic very seriously, and in all honesty, our linemen and our supervisors are basically well protected by our own company as far as screening and making sure that our employees are protected against any potential exposure to COVID, to the point where half of our own staff are working remotely, and we're not even permitted to go onto our sites. So, it's in an effort to, again, utilize our properties as necessary for our crew's safety. And again, we also have numerous heat waves, and we're coming up on storm season as well. So our need to use our substation
Lost her a bit. There you are. We lost you for a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure where I dropped off, but really just trying to explain how our company has been very protective of our employees during the pandemic, as well as with storm season. And the heat waves that we are getting. We've had numerous already that we've had extra crews on. You know, it's not maybe as obvious, I think, to you know, civilians to kind of see what's going on and why we may need crews stationed there at our substations throughout the system.
I appreciate the distancing, and those are admirable policies to try to keep your workers apart. But I don't think that's got anything to do with where you park your trucks. And in this particular area, I don't know if you've been there, but I live very close to it. And you couldn't get those trucks any closer. You could literally touch. They can't get any closer. They're 2 feet apart. Whereas at the public works yard, you can park them anywhere you want. You could have a football field in between them.
No, I hear you. I guess another thing too is that all of our trucks do have spill kits and protocol for parking their vehicles. So I think that's another, I know that you had mentioned how you do not allow construction equipment to be kept overnight in wetland buffer zones. And again, we have spill kits on all of our equipment, and they are also trained as far as you know, any environmental procedures in case there is a leak. So again, you know, we feel that we are addressing those concerns for any potential of any drips of oil that may occur onto the paved surface of the parking area.
Thank you. I hope you understand that we're not talking about emergency staging. I think we all understand and appreciate that. We're not objecting to that. At least I'm not objecting. Wendy, did you have anything that you wanted to say or ask?
I just wanted to say thank you, Denise, for presenting your concerns, and I think we all hear them and appreciate them, but I do agree wholeheartedly with what you have said, John, and I also am not inclined to vote in favor of the proposal.
Okay, and the only other member on tonight has recused himself. We don't, and Denise, we don't have anything before us formally.
Right.
So this is just sort of a public discussion, and you're certainly free to file an application, a notice of intent. I suppose you could file an RDA, but I'm not sure it would be much of a difference between an RDA and a notice of intent.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a one observation. I took a look at the site about a month ago. Denise, my name is Steve Ibis. I'm a conservation agent, part-time. And I noted that there were some plants that had been planted in the wetland that were not appropriately planted. They were a witch hazel, at least 3 of them, and they were either dead or on their way 90% to dying. If any proposal came to us, Denise, you may wish to at least replace those plants. That's all.
Okay.
Witch hazels don't belong in a wetland, unless they're on a.
I thought they were aren't they fact wet?
No, they're not.
What are they?
I believe they're FAC. They've changed their the USGS. I'm sorry, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has changed their designation, and I can check it pretty quickly. One moment here with their latest North Central and Northeast Regional Wetland Plant List, and that's Hemimelis virginiana. Okay, and it is,
Michael Blute, you got to speak up. I can see you. I know you know the answer.
that's actually, they're actually FAC up, American witch hazel.
What's
It's
that?
changed. It's gone from FAC to FAC up.
Okay.
Witch hazel is FAC up now. So it should not be planted in the wetland, really.
All right.
That's all. Not a big deal. But if the Eversource company came back to us, then maybe, you know, we could replace those plants that are dead. That's all.
All right. Well, there was an issue a few years ago Steve, where one of the transformers failed and it was actually fire and some of the trees burned and there was some leakage of contaminants into the water. But they did a good job cleaning up and we've got no issue with that. So I don't know if they were planted at that time. I actually don't know. And I
We
don't
could
know.
look into that if you'd like.
Yeah, the labels look like within the last 5 years.
Right, that would be
Yeah.
within the same time frame.
Just an observation.
All right. Yes, Michael.
John? It's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So one thing that just comes to mind, I'm sorry, Michael Blute, I'm a local architect. One thing that comes to mind would be that given the fact that the transformer failed previously and the devastation that that caused at that time, could you consider asking them to treat the entire area as a containment? And that way, anything that comes off the truck is contained. Anything that happens with the transformer also have another level of containment within that whole area that they're parking in. That way, it gives them the ability to park the trucks there, assuming they don't hang over the edge, and it improves the quality of the containment for the whole transfer on the whole site as far as they're concerned.
You can respond to that directly, Denise, if you will. I don't. It's not paved in the sense that it's not. Jerry mentioned Font Blanc having a paved lot. It's not like that. And
It's not like that. Okay.
There's a berm around it.
Okay. No, I was just looking for a way to get them to improve the site for the Conservation Commission while at the same time letting them use the site for the purposes that they're asking for. And by upgrading the paving and doing it in such a way that it's containment, maybe that solves everyone's problems.
Understood. Denise, you don't have to respond to that, or if you wish to, you may.
I'm not quite sure if it would work really for what we need, considering that we have our substation itself is gravel.
Okay.
All right.
Hi.
So yeah, I was going to say, I was going to have Nancy speak up since I've done some back and forth, but I thought I'd invite Nancy to also speak with regard to this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission for letting me speak. I'm listening to everybody. I'm trying to take this in and figure out, what would be a middle ground that protects the wetland resources that we all care about, but also allows us to keep our trucks parked on our property overnight, which we need to continue to provide reliable and safe source of energy. And we're kind of in a quandary if everybody in this commission.
Okay. All right. I couldn't see you. Okay.
This puts us in a bit of a quandary in that we are not in favor of doing anything that we believe will result in an enforcement order, which is why we've come up with this proposal to try to resolve this issue. So if we can't park our cars there, our trucks there, then you're indicating by your position indicates that we'd be subject to an enforcement because you don't believe it complies with the bylaw. And I think we have to agree to disagree on that because I strongly believe that this does not fall within the term activity as stated in the Wetlands Protection Act. There's no active discharge of pollutants by any stretch of the means, but I understand your concerns and we do hear you, and we're trying to figure out if there's something we could do short of filing, a formal filing with the commission and getting an order of conditions that would satisfy everybody's needs. And we urge you to help us with that, and that's why we've come up with this proposal. If there's some other substantive protective measure we could do that would satisfy the commission, that would be helpful for us to hear. And I'll mute, so I'll mute myself to take the answer offline.
Sure. Well, my quick response is that it's up to the applicant. And again, historically, there have not been trucks there. I've lived here my whole life. They don't park trucks there. This is a relatively new phenomenon. So I don't know why there's a sudden need. Keeping in mind that we do understand the need for emergency staging. We understand that and appreciate it. And I don't think that's an issue. Just give us notice. We understand that. But to shift from no trucks to now having permanent trucks there doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me when there are alternatives. And we do look for, an alternatives analysis. And the town has been gracious enough to provide one. And I know I've heard, your presentation in terms of COVID virus and security and safety. And I think the security is great at the DPW yard. I mean, the town keeps its equipment there safely. In terms of quick access, the fire department has quick access, so does the DPW. They have to get in and out. And I'm sure that access is not an issue for the power company. So I just don't see the change in the need, number one. Number two, I haven't heard anything that would give me any degree of confidence. Michael Blut graciously suggested to make a containment area out of it, and that apparently doesn't fit within your plans either. So again, I invite you to file an application, but I don't think it's up to us to come up with a formula to do something that at least I don't think is a good idea. But I encourage you to do so and be creative and put your thinking cap on, and there may be a way to find some alternative position. But please, if you go back and for reporting purposes, we're not opposed to emergency staging. That's not what the issue is. Okay. Anything else? Michael, get your hand.
Yep. Just one comment. Nancy mentioned active source, and I don't believe that's the issue. What we're talking about is uncontrolled source. We're talking about things that are happening off the trucks that may be in the middle of the night and no one has any idea that they're happening. It's not, we're defining it as active, but our concern is really uncontrolled. And I'm sorry, I'm not a commission member. I used to be a commission member. I'm just a local architect involved with another project today.
I appreciate the explanation and clarifying that for me. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I sort of like Michael's idea, and I suggest to Denise and Nancy that they take a look at the possibility of at least regrading or repaving to provide, as Michael says, a direction to one specific location, perhaps, on the site that may help a small amount.
Thank you. So it sounds like the ball is in your court. I don't mean to cut off discussion, but I'll ask for any other comments, questions, or concerns. And seeing none, I think the ball is in your court at this juncture to come back with a proposal if you think it appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time tonight.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, if I could find my agenda. Steve, what's next on the agenda? Oh, here it is.
It's Wildwood Road Transformer.
Great.
We need to get Hans back here.
Yes.
Actually, you
there he
don't,
is.
because the Wildwood Road transformer is also
An Eversource site.
All right.
so I'll just hang out for a little bit longer.
What are you doing?
Thanks, Hans. We miss you.
All right, Steve, do you want to walk us through I think we've all had an opportunity to read the report.
Yes, and basically there was a either a lightning strike or whatever. Transformer came down on Wildwood Road, entered the town's drainage system, and it was cleaned up by Eversource's contractor, Clean Harbors. And the report does a very good job of the graphics on as to where the utility system went. Is it Clarisbrook Road, I think it is, was the final outfall. And then actually some product ended up in Milton Cemetery, all the way to the cemetery.
Right, it's not Clarisbrook. That's up by that's off a hillside. But
it's another C Brook, something like road. I'm very sorry.
No, I right. It goes.
Let's see. We could take a look at it.
I've got it here, and the report is quite thorough. And you're correct that I think they did a good job tracing the contaminant, finding it, and removing it. And at this juncture, they've got the response.
I'm sorry. It was Coolidge Road. Yep. There we go.
Yeah. But am I correct that DEP has signed off on the response action?
Actually, an LSP has, which is as good as DEP. That's exactly correct.
All right. I did have an opportunity to read the report. I don't know if others did as well, but I'm satisfied that the cleanup was done appropriately, and I think we can close the books on this one. Any other comments, questions, Wendy, Jerry?
No, sir.
Any members of the
Thank
public?
you.
Hearing none, I'm satisfied that the cleanup was done appropriately and has been signed off by the LSP. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is 711 Randolph Avenue.
And I'm back.
Okay, and let me put up. Let's see. Would you like, John, would you like the site plans?
Yeah, just to get people oriented, we're talking about the 40B project off of Randolph Avenue. We refer to it as 711 generally, because that's the area where the access road is going into that, 8 to 10 acre property.
Can people see that?
No, Steve.
I don't see anything.
Okay. Michael, can you allow me to share screen? Let's see, share screen. Let's try this.
There we go.
Is that better?
Yes. Well, we see your desktop.
Okay. There we go. There's a good point at which to talk about things.
We're just looking at an index, Steve. We don't see any kind of a plan.
Oh, you don't?
No, you may have to click on it again. I see you've checked off on revised plans.
Are you using two different screens?
No, I'm just using one screen on a laptop.
Oh, interesting.
It says you are screen sharing at the top as well. Michael, any suggestions? Michael Lynch? Try to hit the share button again. Invite people, no. How do you want to share your, invite people? No, I just want to share it, generally.
I've got a suggestion, Steve.
Okay,
If you go down to the bottom bar, this is a PDF document, so you should go to the PDF icon, and that should show you which documents are open. And if you click on the file that you just opened from that list, there may only be one, you'll share your screen that way.
I just did that again. I went down to, Adobe Acrobat.
Yep.
And it did that, Bob.
Okay, that's solved the problem for me. I'm out of ideas, sorry.
Okay. That's very strange. I was able to do it, a number of times. New share, it says you are screen sharing live.
All right.
You might just close it and reopen it. Maybe it just came in wrong.
Okay. I'll close it and then reopen it. Revise site plans. Let's try that again. Anything?
Didn't change.
Didn't change, Steve.
Isn't that curious?
Well, while you're doing that, let me just get the public up to speed. If you can continue to work on that, Steve, would be great. But
yes,
what brings us here tonight is a discussion and some question and answers to be posed regarding the progress of this notice of intent. It has a very long history going back to 2014. Now I don't know what I'm saying. But the long history it involves activities before the planning board, before the zoning board of appeals. A comprehensive permit was issued. There was an appeal to the housing. There we go.
You did it.
is that it? Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
you may want to, yeah, that's probably a good one. Go back one.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah, okay. That's probably a good baseline for us. And the current posture is that the Housing Appeals Committee, after an administrative hearing / trial, made a decision and issued the comprehensive permit for a larger project than the town had permitted. And then the town and one abutter took an appeal, which is currently pending in the Superior Court. And I don't know, Paul Holland, you can probably help me out if there's any estimate as to when anybody hopes to get a ruling out of the Superior Court. But in any event, we are now processing the notice of intent filed under the Wetlands Protection Act. Because the comprehensive permit issued, then that basically preempts or trumps any kind of municipal bylaw. Going way back to 2014, the applicant had actually filed simultaneously before the ZBA and the Conservation Commission. And we denied the permit under the bylaw, which was at that time still extant, but it became moot after the comprehensive permit was issued. We had deferred our ruling on the Wetlands Protection Act until the comprehensive permit was resolved. And then we're now back in action, and we're now considering this, even though the appeal part of it is still pending. Over the last 6+ months, we've looked at a number of revised plans. And in January, our consultant, CEI, had issued questions and comments. Giselle and Burke, on behalf of the applicant, in April had issued some responses and suggestions and some revisions. And we're now trying to get the commission to take a look at those two positions, one by CEI, which is a consultant to the Conservation Commission, and the other from Giselle and Burke and their and I think in order to move the process along, we wanted to do this in a public setting so the public could participate in the question and answer series. And at this juncture, we do have a number, the members of the commission do have a number of questions that I think folks can pose individually and state their concerns. And I can start, and I guess I should make a couple of comments with respect to some information that we received from the applicant. One of them was a suggestion that, well, let me back up. I've got two issues that I've expressed over the last 6 years. One is a hydrology study that I think is appropriate and necessary and was requested from the applicant in 2014 on the record before the comprehensive permit ever issued. And we have been consistent in requesting at each public meeting that that hydrological study be done. There's a suggestion from the applicant that somehow that issue was rendered moot. And there's a suggestion in the Housing Appeals Committee that the Planning Board or the ZBA was not entitled to ask for a second hydrological study. And our position is very clearly that the Housing Appeals Committee cannot trump the Wetlands Protection Act. And under the Act, we are, our mandate and our charter is to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Conservation Commission is entitled to ask for a hydrology study, which is consistent going back to 2014 with what we asked. So that's an issue that we will persist in pursuing. The second issue for me is the constructability of the access road. And constructability is actually, it's a term of art, and that is whether or not the construction plan is actually doable. And we've got an issue that's been presented at public meetings repeatedly, and that is whether or not the excavation can be done up to the limit of work, because the limit of work defines an amount of disturbance that is under the 5,000 square feet. And it's certainly been my position from the beginning that I don't think this can be done, because we're dealing with hydric soils, we're going down out, I don't know how many feet. I'm going to ask the applicant for discussion to address the issue of how deep do you have to excavate, not only to put in the bridge abutments, but also how deep do you have to go to put the sewer line in? My concern is if you're dealing in a wetland, and folks, this is not a buffer zone. We're right in the middle of the wetlands, and this is wet, a lot of water there. So I've got concerns about the dewatering plan, how you can excavate to 10 feet to put a sewer line in there, not have the sides of the trench collapse. Put the abutment in, you're right at the limit of work. If you exceed the limit of work, then you're going to extend into additional alterations to the wetlands, which is going to trigger the need for a MEPA review and other associated requirements. And we've stated from the very beginning that a MEPA review is warranted in this case. And the applicant has made a decision to go forward and try to cut that line as if with a laser and hope that the sides of the trench don't collapse. So I guess the two big issues that I have are, is this constructible, given the fact that there is no room, there's no margin of error, there's no room for soil collapse and digging a trench, everybody knows that's going to happen. And we don't want to impose additional delays if you're within the middle of construction. And you suddenly, the trench collapses and now you're beyond your 5,000 square feet, and now you have to go to MEPA. That's going to be a delay. And I personally have suggested, going back a year at least, said that why not get the MEPA review now instead of going to the very end and doing something that I don't think is constructible. Now, I appreciate, for the public's benefit, the contractor or I guess the engineer on behalf of the contractor says it can be done. I consider that to be argument by assertion. And we need to have some engineering principle that can tell us with some degree of confidence that you can dig a trench along a straight line and not have hydric soil collapse, extending that limit of work further into the wetlands. So that's the big question for me. And I go back to my original point that goes back to 2014. I still want a hydrological study, and it has not been waived. The Housing and Appeals Committee has nothing to do with the Conservation Commission. The ZBA doesn't. And I note in some of the most recent literature that somehow somebody thinks that back in 2014 and 15, that the Conservation Commission had retained ditch engineering. That is not true. I've been on the commission since 1993. We've never retained ditch engineering. We did see some of their findings that were done at the behest of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but the Conservation Commission never retained as a consultant or peer review of anything. We have certainly had the benefit of reading their materials. That is not our consultant and never was. So having said that, my big issues, and I'd like our consultants to respond to my two questions. Number one, is a hydrological study appropriate in order to determine whether or not there are alternatives to the culvert design? And as an alternative means using a pier-supported concrete plank to allow the water free flow beneath the road. And my second question is this roadway and bridge constructible in light of the fact that the trench is going to go right up to the limit of work? And is that reasonable to think that there will be no collapse of soils that will extend the alteration further into the wetlands? Those are my two questions. And I'd ask the CEI representatives to respond to those. And then most definitely the applicant and its experts will have an opportunity to respond as well. Steve, who is Steve?
Yes.
Who is on for CEI?
Bob Hartzell is here.
I believe Matt
And-
Lund's also
and
on
Matt-
the phone.
Yeah, Steve, can you hear me? It's Matt.
I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Matt Lundstedt for Comprehensive Environmental. I think, Bob, if I'm not incorrect, those sound like two questions for me. Do you
I agree with
have
that.
anything?
I might have some commentary on the margins, but I think those are generally questions that are in your wheelhouse.
Right. So I guess to your first question about a hydrological study, I think one of our comments was about stepping back and saying in order to potentially minimize the impact to the wetland, had enough alternatives been looked at. And if one of those alternatives was a peer-supported bridge, there would need to be, I'm not sure it's a full hydrological study, but there would need to be some additional geotechnical, and it may tie in some groundwater study, some work done to determine what the foundations for those piers would look like. So in that respect, I don't think a standalone hydrological study answers that question, but I think in order to assess that alternative completely, you would need to look at both groundwater and soil types below. And, you know, I'm talking to a depth that's, you know, boring depth. You'd need to drill borings beyond test pit depth to determine what those foundations would need to look like.
And Matt, may I add a question, a follow-up question? Do you need the same type of borings for the bridge that's presently designed? Do you need borings, deep borings?
No.
Okay.
You would need some kind of soil study, but you would likely not need to go as deep as you would for a pier supported structure that's attempting to span much more than 12 feet. I think a smaller test pit would be appropriate to determine it's a safe assumption that at some point suitable soils exist which you could place foundation soils on, which are their, you know, proposed, I can't remember, it's 12 inches of crushed stone or gravel. But at some point for a three-sided 12-foot wide span, you don't need the same level that you would for a bigger bridge. That I think it has to be one of the alternatives that needs to be considered.
Thank you.
Well, Bob, did I direct your attention to a particular area of the chart that you see before you?
I'm only on by phone, so if you could tell me what sheet you're on, I could look at it. You know, a sheet number?
One moment. It's the grading and drainage sheet. And it's, let's see, where's our sheet number? Sheet 5 of 13.
Sheet 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead. What was the specific question?
I'm looking for the direction. It looks like it's on the north side, so it would be the lower right side of this diagram. And you see the house, I think the number is 675.
75, yes.
That's the one right there. Now, Wendy, yeah, beautiful. Keep going. Okay, you moved that. Thanks, Steve, for moving that. So it's now 669.
660. 669.
Right. It's the one that that's the one. It abuts the DPW.
Mm-hmm.
We've had in the recent past notice of intent there to rehab the back of the house because of flooding, significant flooding in the area, right where the hand is that Steve has placed. Historically, we've had a number of permits in this area, and we've had neighborhood anecdotal recitations of the history of flooding. We've had photographs. We actually had a photograph of a canoe in that area. That water flows, I believe, in a southerly direction from right to left towards the road, towards the new roadway and the bridge abutment. I'm
Yes.
interested in whether or not putting in like a solid road there with a culvert is going to create a mounding effect and push water back or hold water back that would impact on 669, 675, and 681. That corner is very, very wet there. And that's why I was looking for the study to see whether or not if the roadway, other than the, well, including the culvert, but other than the culvert opening, would actually push water back in the direction that there's already a problem.
I guess without them specifically providing calculations for that flow, I don't believe, as long as the 12-foot wide channel has the capacity to pass what currently causes flooding there, and I'm not sure, we'd have to know what level of storms that has been an issue, and by level of storms I mean a 5-year 24-hour storm has caused significant flooding, and so your question is, what, now that it's open, it goes where it wants and finds its way out somehow. With the embankment associated with the road as they're proposing and just a 12-foot wide open channel, does that exacerbate any flooding at those locations? That's a valid question. I'm not sure the amount of information they've currently provided answers that.
And so
but it's certainly something they should.
Just real quick, there is, we do know the date when the abutter came in about the work they were doing in that filing. So, I mean, within 6 months of that, we would have the applicant could look at the storm data around that time to see what is what caused the flooding during that time span.
Absolutely. And there could be there is a study that can be done to, if you're worried about this embankment cutting off enough subsurface flow, that there may be a higher groundwater level or level of water in the wetland before that storm comes. That's certainly something that could be considered both pre and post, because that embankment is going to essentially, not allow groundwater to move from the north to the south as it does now through the wetland soils. So yeah, that type of study could yield, by comparison, a pre and post, much like the pre and post they've had to do to analyze their runoff and how they handle their stormwater. That type of study would yield that answer.
And thank you. Wendy, any question?
No, other than my primary concern has already been addressed by your two main concerns, John, and I have also been very very concerned about the feasibility of the crossing as it's being proposed, and to be honest, I feel like the question still remains based on the work that CEI has done, as well as the response to CEI's report from the applicant. So it's still a big question in my mind.
So to the constructability, this is Matt again from CEI, to the constructability issue, we raised that question in our review letter. There's some, I believe one of the, and just to back up a step, we have not at this point reviewed their response to comments to analyze whether they've adequately addressed that concern, but there will need to be a structural cut to install both this embankment and the three-sided box culvert, that without erosion control barrier just sitting on whatever surface of the wetland on either side, I am seriously questioning whether that cut will hold up. Lacking some sort of either sheet piling or some sort of lagging timber piling to maintain that vertical face and work on the inside of that. It's very tight, as I think some of our comments in our review letter have stated. And I apologize, my understanding was we haven't received direction to look at their letter yet and provide written responses. The commission wanted to wait until they read both letters and asked us questions.
And that's the purpose of doing this in a public setting.
Right.
I invited Wendy for any questions, and Hans, you may have questions. Well, Wendy, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have any other?
No, you didn't. You did not. It's just that now we've had two consultant reports that have questioned the viability of that culvert going in as
We have
proposed.
one.
What was that, Hans?
I'm sorry, we have one consultant report.
What-
The other board had received another report, just to clarify.
I was referring to the Horsley and Witten report that their engineers had done. It was, I believe that that was submitted by the neighbors some time ago. But anyway, those questions are still out there for me.
John, both Hans and I have written down some detailed questions, which I would not want to go through tonight because it's 4 pages of questions for CEI. I'd like to transmit them with your approval, both of those documents, to CEI as well as the applicant, probably tomorrow morning.
But that's fine as long as it's made part of the public record, so that
Yes.
the citizens
Yes.
have an opportunity to see the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a short version of the topic?
Well, the short version of the topic is, I think there may be some sequencing issues on how do you build a water line after you put the culvert in, for example. There's other issues regarding the slope of the hillside and how they're going to prevent all the soil from running down the hillside if there's a cloud burst and the hillside has been tree felled, stumped, and everything taken off. I have questions regarding the location of the wetland replication sites. I don't believe that those locations are the best area for them. And the reason being, they are the only buffer that is protecting the wetland from the impact, the direct impact of the developed area. They could very simply go to the north and west. There are some other wetlands, and I will show you on the plan here.
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Yep, there are other wetlands right here and right here. That could be added to. This is all upland in here and in here. And it's actually easy to get there because you could come right through the DPW yard to this spot. So I really question putting the wetland replication right there. Those are the main points, perhaps, of the 4 pages of details that I have. And actually, Hans had some of the same issues, didn't you? Hans?
I think Hans is frozen.
Are you there, Hans?
I think he is frozen.
He looks deep in thought.
Indeed, indeed. So Hans had some deep, very detailed questions as well. Oh, one he put out was there is no statement in the Wetlands Protection Act that a replication area has to be as close as possible to the wetland being destroyed or impacted. That statement does not exist anywhere in the Wetlands Protection Act, and it's mentioned a number of times by the applicant in the applicant's details. So that's something that's completely false from the applicant. Just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Is Hans come back? I lost the picture, but I don't know if his audio is still working.
He's unmuting now, I can see. Any luck, Hans? Oh.
Are you back?
I have a couple of concerns, John, while we're waiting for Hans, if I may.
Jerry, yes, Jerry. Hans just texted me and said that his screen is frozen. So I'll tell him to keep trying. Thank you, Jerry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so who is speaking for CEI? Is it Bob or Matt?
It's Matt.
Okay, Matt, your comment that you didn't get to see their response just cut this meeting by 20 minutes because all my questions go to what you thought. But generally speaking, as you do that review, I was struck by how many times the proponents recalculated things and sort of answered a lot of the concerns that you put up as, oh, we recalculated, we redid this, we redid that, in many of the responses. When you go through those, if for someone who's not an engineer and has not been on this committee for a very long time, could you characterize some of the areas where there have been recalculations? If you could please characterize them as significant or not significant.
Sure.
I would appreciate that. And just in general, I want to say this, that we do need to have I want to be satisfied that the culvert is enough, because in the 80s, and these are personal observations that I had of a culvert on Unquity Brook by Brook Road. I have about 300 feet of Unquity Brook. It goes down 7 feet. It's more like a drainage ditch than a idyllic brook. But in the 80s, mid to the late 80s, Larry DeSalle told me that it was a 100-year flood. And there are twin pipes or twin culverts, about 6, 7, maybe 8 feet apiece, that acted as a dam. And my property was not flooded. The brook was right up to the 7 or 8 foot mark of the top of the brook. But there were a similar situation as we have along here on Randolph Ave, where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 houses all along Brook Road were flooded. That the culvert itself was inadequate for that situation, and it was not clogged up. There were no maintenance problems or anything, but the culvert acted as a dam. And when you look at this situation, there is already flooding going on there, and then there is an immense amount of impervious area being added to this area. I just don't see any culvert working. And it just seems to be common sense to have this peer-supported planking type of road, where there will never be, where the culvert can't fail for size, where the water will always flow, And then, as Steve points out, those additional wetlands, because of the addition of all this impervious area, it's all going to funnel back down in there. So yes, John, your call for in-depth hydrological or whatever it's called, I for one need to see it. So and the other thing about snow removal.
Jerry,
Yeah.
could I interrupt just for a minute? Mike Lynch, I just got a text from Hans. He's trying to get back in. Is there anything you can do to facilitate his getting back in? He said he's waiting to be admitted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Evidently, that screen was transferred to me. I just, quote unquote, admitted him.
Oh, okay, good.
So maybe he'll get back in that way. Because I've been admitting people for whatever reason.
All right.
I'm
Thank-
back.
You're back. Oh, good. Thanks. All right. Yeah, Jerry was just in the middle of speaking, Hans. I'm glad you're back. Jerry, thanks for the allowing the interruption.
Okay, so one final thing, and it's not final. It's just that I know that Matt hasn't been able to talk to the responses, but in addition to all the impervious area and the possibility of the culvert failing for size or whatever, I am uncomfortable with any snow storage up there at all. I think there should, we should add into this whole discussion total snow removal, because that's when that's when there's saturation. Late March snowstorm and rain or snow, it's just a disaster. And having experienced that, one side of the culvert acting as a bridge, there is an unused road we're talking about at that intersection of Brook Road and the Unquity Brook. But when I saw that act as a dam that wiped out all those houses along Brook Road, I just see this happening, not only for that house that's adjacent to it, but every one of those houses that comes up to that road, and I believe that's on the north side, north of that road. So, yeah, I'm anxious to see something. Thank you.
Hans, are you back?
Yes, I am.
Good, thanks. We've just been going through trying to highlight some of the questions we have, and understanding that you may have a number of detailed questions. Steve had suggested that he had some detailed questions and wanted to submit them in writing, which I think is a great idea, and that could facilitate discussion and expert participation, as long as they're part of the public record. So that
Sure.
Steve had agreed to forward that tomorrow and make sure that it's part of our public file.
Sure.
Could you do the same thing? Just kind of highlight the subject matter of your questions.
Sure.
Save the details for a written.
Yep. So just to reinforce your previous statement regarding the need for a hydraulic study, just want to revisit the definition of limited project per the Wetlands Protection Act. And it specifically says construction maintenance of a new roadway or driveway of minimum legal and practical width acceptable to the planning board where reasonable, alternative means of access from a public way to an upland area of the same owner is unavailable, which the applicant has shown. The very next sentence says such roadway or driveway shall be constructed in a manner which does not restrict the flow of water. So, I mean, that's the crux of the issue there, and it's I think it again is a valid question. Regarding the design of the wetland replication area, I do not think it's a design that is going to survive. I don't think it's in an appropriate location. The applicant stated in the response that the replication area is required to be as close as possible to the impact area. That is entirely false. That is an incorrect statement. It does need to be within, it should be within the reach of the same wetland, but it doesn't need to be immediately adjacent to the impact. In addition to that, you know, I want to, Steve, if you could center the map down a little bit at the roadway crossing.
Sure.
And I want to make sure the public is very clear, if you could, the proposed wetland alteration, permanent 4,344 square feet, temporary 609 square feet. Total is 4,953 square feet. The trigger for a 401 water quality cert is 5,000 square feet. That is just an additional level of permitting. However, it doesn't make the project infeasible. It just means that there's an additional review, which is appropriate for this type of project, that the state conducts. I don't think that pushing the design and pushing the risk for the temporary impacts as shown is worth trying to duck another level of review. This type of project is the exact reason why our water quality certification, the 401 review is appropriate. And so in addition to that, I would just like to make sure that CEI has an opportunity to provide the thorough response to the stormwater calculations or to the stormwater design standards, and make sure that that is reviewed and appropriate in terms of the engineering.
All right, I know those are high points. Do you have those in written form that either reflect what you just said or perhaps even in more detail?
Yeah, I do.
All right, could you submit those then to Kathy Bowen so it's part of the public record?
Of course.
And then submit those to CEI so that
Yep.
we can ask them to respond to those questions, but also make sure that everyone has access to it, free and unfettered access to those questions.
So John, there's a step we haven't taken yet, and that step is to ask CEI to review the applicant's response to CEI's comments, the first set. The commission has not asked CEI to do that, as Matt stated earlier.
All right, well, that, I think we need to respond right away, and yes, I mean, I'm fully in favor of that. I thought it had already been submitted to them.
It's been submitted, but we haven't asked them to do it.
Oh, all right, well.
And they need to be directed to do that. That's an important step for the commission. And you may wish to take a vote on that.
Is there a motion to ask CEI to respond to the applicant's response?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye and raise your hand. Can't see all the hands, but I think that's unanimous. Hans, I can't see you. Did you, how did you?
I did raise my hand.
All right, okay, that's unanimous.
Great. Thank you all.
All right. Now, I'm just taking sort of a general list of questions, keeping in mind that there'll be more specific ones going to CEI. But at this juncture, we've got the hydrology study, the constructability or feasibility of the roadway, the wetlands replication location, the recalculation of, I guess, the stormwater discharge that the applicant has gone through, snow storage, I guess the limited project definition in terms of the restriction on the flow of water, that might fall within the hydrology number. I'm just trying to get the big topics. The 401 water quality review. Those are the ones that I've got as kind of the high points, and I'd like to give an opportunity to the applicant or the applicant's experts to respond if they feel comfortable in doing that at this juncture.
John, this is Brian Levy. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I ask our experts to address some of the substantive issues that have been raised here. As you know, from the letter we submitted to the board a couple weeks ago, we have some serious reservations with the process that's being followed here. It's been about, we're heading into year 2 of the review of this NOI, and tonight is the first night we've had a substantive discussion with your expert peer review company. And to learn tonight that the response to comments which my client submitted about 60 days ago, which consisted of a 25-page memorandum response to comments, to CEI's comments, plus exhibits A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, with an incredible amount of detailed information to try to dot every I and cross every T that CEI sent to us, to sit here tonight and to learn that they have not yet even reviewed that document really casts a huge cloud over the value of tonight's proceeding. It's very hard to move forward when people aren't reviewing documents so that we can all be at the same place and have the same conversation at the same time. So what we've heard tonight is you've now, after the submission of the response to comments 60 days ago, you've now taken a vote to allow your consultant to respond to those comments. An action which is, in my experience, unprecedented.
Mr. Levy?
The problem is we need to understand, before my consultants respond to the substantive comments, we need to understand how this can go forward. Your engineer is going to be receiving a series of questions on things that may already have been answered. And we're going to go round and round and round. We have no order to moving forward. We have a series of questions, the answers to which may already have been provided. So what I would like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we have CEI respond to our comments, respond to all your questions in 2 weeks, post that on your website, make it publicly available, so that when we come back a month from now, we're at the same place. We have all of CEI's materials on all of your questions and on our comments, so that we can move forward together. Your rules, your regulations, the way you operate calls for submissions 2 weeks ahead of time. And we should have CEI's, all of their responses to all your questions and responses to our comments within 2 weeks, so that when we come here next time, we can be talking about the same thing at the same time. So I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, if that is an acceptable way to proceed.
Well, my quick response is it depends on the number of questions that are submitted as to how fast that they can do it. If you're asking for a good faith effort to expedite and facilitate the process, then you have 100% support for that proposal. But I can't prejudge the questions that are specific coming from Steve Ivas and from Hans van Lingeren. What I can say is that these issues that I just kind of highlighted, the 6 or 7 of those that I highlighted, have been discussed since 2014. So those aren't new issues. The hydrology study I asked for 6 years ago and have yet to receive it. With respect to the constructability, I know for the last 2 years, we've certainly been talking about the constructability of it. And also, I recognize that CEI has not been asked to respond, but I think they did review what you have. But I can ask Matt or Bob as to their response to that. Somebody tried to ask a question of you, and I didn't know what it was. I couldn't.
Sorry, there are 2 people talking there. We've given, I would say, an initial, read the response letter through. In that early phase of doing that was when we got clarification about the process that the commission is going through now, and that this meeting was intended for the commission to ask questions based on our initial review letter. So the more structured, one at a time, answer the specific question, write a response to the response to comments. That process has not gone through yet. Have we read the letter and looked at the plans as an initial review? Yes.
So I just want to bring up one thing, John, if you don't mind. We were actually prepared to start this process in, I believe, May. And what was the applicant's position in May on discussing the project? They were on the agenda, correct?
Oh, yes, and I think Paul.
And I think they continued and declined to speak about the project. Previously, excuse me, sir. Previously, we've been very flexible with the applicant in providing information on very short notice to the commission in well under 2 weeks, where there's been a number of submittals that have come in the day of or the day before the hearing, where we're expected to do a similar level of review, where we've been flexible and we've afforded the applicant that ability. So, I think the rules should go both ways.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me ask this. May we have a commitment that we will at least have CEI's responses or comments on my client's response to comments within 2 weeks?
I certainly cannot make that representation because
I would ask CEI if they could, through you, Mr. Chairman, if you could ask CEI if they could turn that around in 2 weeks, that would be very helpful.
they don't know what the questions are yet, because from what I understand.
No, I'm referring to our response to comments.
You're going to have to stop and allow me to speak until I'm completed. I will ask Bob and Matt what they think it'll take them to respond to what they know now. They would be hard pressed to give a time frame for responding to questions that they haven't seen yet. And what we've heard tonight on the public record was that Steve Ivas has some written questions that he would like to submit that are more detailed than the highlights that we went through tonight. And I understand that Hans has as well. So we can certainly get a generic response from Bob or Matt. But I think they would be hard pressed to respond to a timeline not knowing what they'll receive tomorrow. But I do invite their response, that is Bob and Matt, if you can respond, to give some guidance as to the timeline.
I think, well, I'll go first just because I think Matt has a little heavier lift on this one. In terms of who was doing what, or the civil engineering part of it, I was leading the wetland environmental regulatory end of it. I think a lot of the questions that I raised were more functional, questions about calculations and numbers that I know from reading the initial response to comments that some of those have been revised, and it's easier to confirm and just sort of go through that. There are a couple of big picture substantive issues that I do think on my end 2 weeks is enough time, but I don't want to speak for Matt, so I'll let him answer for himself here.
Exactly 2 weeks from today, I'm on vacation for that week. We can certainly endeavor over the next few days, and next week's also a short week, to get those together. We'll certainly make our best faith effort to do that. And to clarify, just to, at this point, response to comments, in terms of the other questions which come up, like you said, until we see them and discuss internally, I'm not sure we'd have those. But your next hearing is the 21st,
14th of July.
14th of July.
That's 3 weeks away, correct?
Right.
Yes, that is correct. So can you get a preliminary response reserving the right to dot some i's
Sure.
and t's later on, if necessary.
We can have a letter that forwards things, absolutely. That's by the 7th.
Fair enough.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to CEI. I'm going to stop there, and if I may, turn it over to my consultant, Scott Morrison, to start to respond to the issues that have been raised here tonight, and Jim Burke will fill in with him as needed. Scott?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Scott, thank you.
Thanks. There's a couple, I guess, if I can kind of touch upon some of the comments. Mainly the constructability with the access road. We've looked at that. We've got about 36-inch deep cuts for the footings to be installed. We plan on using trench boxes or sheet pilings or timber pilings. It's pretty consistent with projects you see in the road where they've got to do, much deeper excavation work. So you just need to shore it up. So everybody on both engineering and construction are satisfied and fully committed to making sure that this can be constructed within the approved limits. And then again, the trench for the sewer line is a little bit deeper, but keep in mind that can be, it's well within that corridor, and it's a narrow trench, so that's much easier to construct. So we're comfortable. We provided detailed information sequencing to demonstrate that this can be constructed.
What method of shoring are you proposing?
We've got it in the construction sequence. There's additional detail.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, I don't mean to interrupt or throw you off, but can you tell me, is the sewer line 10 feet down?
I don't believe it's that deep. You'd have to go, there's profiles in the plan submitted. You have to look at those profiles, but I don't believe it's that deep.
This is Steve Ivas, Scott. It's 10 feet below existing ground surface. I looked at it specifically for that reason, okay?
Can you go back to that?
Trying to find
profile.
the profile. Do you remember what sheet it's on?
You just had it a minute ago. It's on sheet.
Not there. Not there. Yeah, it's.
There's a driveway profile sheet, Steve.
Okay.
I think if you keep going up before those.
Before the details. Okay, before the details.
Yeah, before the details. Keep
Okay,
going.
well, that's the last one before the details, right there.
Keep going. One more, I think.
Sheet 7.
Right there. So again, that's, you unquestionably
Well,
need
this
trench
is-
boxes to get that to work, but
No,
it's
this
a
is
narrow
not-
trench to install that pipe.
That's not the sheet I saw. I'm sorry. That's not it wasn't this sheet. It was a cut sheet. It was a side view, not a long side view. So in
Yeah,
any
because I think
case,
this is probably the best sheet to show that profile and where that is in relation to existing grade.
well, we don't see it coming across the wetland. You see, we see the sewer line. There's the sewer.
Correct. And then
And
there's a
where-
manhole and it drops down.
Oh, there
to
we
the
go.
8-inch PVC sewer right there.
Okay, so the sewer here is invert's 98.11, and up on top we've got 120 feet. Now this over here, it's
We can look at the existing grade. It's the dashed line, so it's about 108.
exactly. So it's yeah. There we go. 10 feet below existing ground surface. Not an easy trench to do, particularly when we don't know what the soils are underneath the wetland.
May I interrupt?
That's the whole purpose for using a trench box. It's typical roadway stuff. You don't know what you're, to ensure up the, typical roadway, you use a trench box, and I expect nothing different in this particular instance.
May I interrupt? This is Jim Burke.
Right
Yes,
ahead, Jim.
Go ahead.
That is incredibly easy construction, typically done in the drier months, July, August. You throw a trench box down. Sometimes you have to double them up. You have to go a little bit deeper to put a point in to dewater the trench, throw in some stone, keep the connection dry. You'll go about, looks like to be about, I don't know, 20 feet. You backfill, then you start building up again with the new manhole. You bring it up to the grade where the culvert is, and Bob's your uncle, and you're done. And that's
And
all.
how
And
does,
you're all contained within an 8-foot wide working area in that wet area, Steve. It's been done 1,000
yes.
times.
However, then you have affected the groundwater passage through that entire area, haven't you?
How is that? I mean, we're just putting a pipe in, connecting a proposed pipe to an existing sewer that exists at the same elevation. That's all we're doing.
No. In the trench itself, depending on how you backfill the trench, you may affect the groundwater passage through the trench area at a 90-degree angle.
I disagree. The thing is that you're going to be using a crushed stone that allows the water to pass through freely and to prevent it groundwater from following the pipe to dry out a wetland, which actually is going to be, it's not going to be the case because the pipe itself is within the wetland and it's not, moving away to an upland area. So that's not an issue, but you can certainly prevent water from traveling down the pipeline with a bentonite collar of that nature. I don't
Right.
anticipate
I
that being an
don't
issue,
see any clay dams or collars on any of the plans.
I can certainly put those in the specs if they're warranted to prevent groundwater from traveling down the existing pipeline.
Okay.
Hey, Jim Burke, while you've got the microphone there, can you tell me what the phasing is for this construction? When does the sewer pipe go in vis-a-vis? When does the road go in? When does the culvert go in?
It's all in the submission that we submit. I think it's dated in April. But typically you do the deep stuff first and you work your way up. So to answer your question, the sewer's first. We get that up to an elevation where we're putting the culvert in and the temporary roadway across the wetland. It's actually a fairly in-depth construction sequencing plan that we submitted. And, it has the shoring for the bridge, has how we're going to accomplish that. I look forward to CEI's comments. They're reviewing their questions originally on the site walk were invaluable in preparing the documents that you have. The topography suggestion within the wetland itself, it provided insight on a new insight for me in how the hydrology actually works on this particular site. The flooding at 669 that you guys were talking about earlier, that's a localized topography issue related to a flash flood off the pavement of the DPW. I know that because I've seen it. And honestly, to prove that, maybe we'll have to send the crew out and do some topography for that guy's backyard. We just don't have access to it.
He'd be delighted to give you access, I'm sure.
Actually, I saw the poor guy at that notice of intent hearing, and he's got a monster pipe pointed right on his backyard, and there's nothing he can do. It's unfortunate.
So let me ask you: you're confident that the roadway isn't going to cause further restriction to the flow that's coming across the gentleman's property?
Let me answer it this way. Another CEI comment was to repurpose the outfall for the overall drainage because it didn't represent accurately reality. So I went down to the Randolph Ave culvert at Reed Street, which is twin 48s. Shooting across.
Mr. Burke, can you answer my question?
I'm trying to. So the Twin 48s, that area, has a larger watershed contributing to it, a much larger watershed contributing to it. And that square footage for that culvert is 25.8 square feet. We're proposing 48 square feet of culvert to allow for a lesser watershed and an upgradient watershed to flow through. I've done calculations that are attached to that April submission that show a reduction in flood elevation for the swale moving forward. I'm very, very confident that the culvert would actually possibly assist the flooding aspects of it and be able to just wick through. And actually, again, I'm showing very slight reductions in flood elevation.
So you're saying that the construction of the roadway and including the culvert is going to reduce flooding for that abutter?
I'll say that I'm not going to exacerbate it.
Okay. We'll have CEI include that in there.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to ask if Scott could just briefly address your other major issue, which was the hydrology study.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to what Jim just said, that the there's half the amount of culvert below the site, so that the culvert that's proposed is twice that size. So there will not be any constriction in the flow underneath this proposed road. The other thing, if I could, I'd like to kind of hit on was there was some discussion regarding replication area. In our response, I might have paraphrased a bit too much, but one of the general performance standards is the overall horizontal configuration and location of the replacement area with respect to the bank should be similar to that lost area. So that
applies to a riverfront area, or to a river restoration.
Right, but if
are
you
we
go
talking
back,
about a river? Is this a perennial stream?
No.
Okay.
But if you go back to Mr. Ivas mentioned that he'd prefer that the replication area be, if you can pull up that plan where he proposed, locating that replication area.
Can you see the screen now?
Yep,
Yeah.
we can see the screen. If you can get to that replication area.
Right up in
Right
here.
there. Yeah, so we're mitigating for bordering vegetative wetland fill and providing replication. The area that you just encircled is an isolated vegetative wetland. So we wouldn't be able to, I think what you're saying there, you could certainly do that. The intent, kind of one of our rationales for doing this is because there's going to be obviously there's disturbance near the proposed crossing. So if you construct the replication areas as close as you can to the crossing, you minimize the global disturbance. Granted, we can go and we can provide it on the backside of the wetland or construct it somewhere else. But keep in mind, you've got to create an access road. You've got to do the grading. So you wind up doing much more disruption for the same replication area. So we're obviously, we can be flexible about this, but that's, keep that in mind while you're kind of thinking of options for replication areas.
And my point is, this now is functional. If you didn't put the replication here, it would function as a buffer to the developed area. Once the replication area is there, there's no buffer at all. There's nothing to catch anything coming down the hill, for example, in those high rainfall events.
And again, if it's the commission's wish that we look at other alternatives, that was our.
We lost you. Whoever was speaking?
That was Scott.
Sounds like we lost him, Mr. Chairman. So I think we're going to pause there for tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. So it looks like we have a plan going forward to have CEI address the general questions that we've presented, and we think we get a preliminary response by the 7th of July, which will be part of the public record. There'll be additional written questions in more detail submitted tomorrow, and those will be included to the extent possible in the July 7th preliminary report. And CEI, I believe, is reserving its right to dot some i's and cross some t's if necessary, if it takes additional time to respond to the specific questions. But I think that sounds like a plan going forward. And we'll be able to have another substantive discussion on July 14th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if Steve or Kathy could just forward us a copy of the questions that get sent into CEI, I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of commissioners before we go on to a different agenda item? No? Hans, I can't see you. Jerry, I can't see you.
No additional questions for me. Thank you.
All right, Jerry?
I'm sorry, John, I'm all set for now.
All right, good. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks all for your patience with the process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks all.
Next agenda item is 36 Audubon Road. That's number 5 on the agenda.
Yes.
Chairman, that's me, Michael Blute, representing for Tina and Chris Merman.
And Michael, which would you like to see? The survey stamped?
No, actually, I'd like to show, if you start on the first plan sheet, which is A1.1.
First plan sheet, I think.
Yep.
That's 0.1?
Second, that's the cover sheet, the next sheet. Yeah, right there.
Right there, okay.
So the property is located on Audubon at the elbow, which abuts Pine Tree Brook. The back lot line, the rear lot line of the property is defined by the concrete, or the rear lot line is against the concrete retaining wall of the brook. The scope of the work is the addition of a full width farmer's porch 8 feet off the front of the existing house, along with reconstruction of a new front stairway to that porch, and a dormer on the second floor across the front of the house. There are other renovations associated with the project, relocation of some windows, some other repairs to some siding and the back stairs refinishing, but not reconstruction. The impacts to the ground are represented on the last sheet in the set, which is the structural drawing S1.1. And that shows the 4 footings across the front of the property, as well as the footing for the new front stair. All of the significant work, meaning the front porch, is the nearest corner of that construction is over 61 feet from the wetland, the stream edge. The furthest corner, the opposite side, is 68 feet, over 68 feet.
Yeah, 61 there.
The issue, I believe the issue for the Conservation Commission is the increase in impervious area caused by the roof and the front stairs. So what we're proposing is to add a dry well, which is shown on the drawing in the upper, kind of upper center of the plan, the right rear corner of the house, behind the right rear corner of the house, outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. We have not sized the capacity of that dry well to handle the water coming off the roof. The intent is to do that calculation once the contractor's on site and we can do an excavation and evaluate the absorption of the site to be able to handle all the water that we can come off the roof. With the dry well located in that location, we can catch the rainwater that's coming off the main roof of the house. And actually, let me show you. So if you look at sheet, the roof plan A2.4, so the front of the house is facing to the right. The rectangle along the right-hand side of the drawing is the new front porch. The rectangle in the center, of the roof, is actually the new dormer, which is from the ridge of the existing house towards the front of the house. And then the rear of the roof and the back porch roof are really only just getting re-shingled. Snow, ice and snow, and dams and new gutters and that kind of work. So the only increase in the impervious area to the site is really the roof of the existing front porch. The design calls for all the rain leaders for both the primary roof, the new dormer roof, and the front porch roof to drain to the right-hand side of the house so that we can actually catch those at grade and pipe them back to the new dry well. So we're actually increasing the amount of water that we're putting back into the ground directly rather than just depositing on the surface. We are not trying to catch 100% because the back porch and then the zone of the dormer on the left-hand side of the house, it would be too complex to catch that water, and both of those areas are relatively minor in the scheme of the entire property. The entire site is fully developed in terms of there's no kind of original plant growth. There are trees on the site. There are some issues on the site that we have decided to table. There are 2 large trees in the back that need to be pruned, and there's some damage to the retaining wall of the stream as well as to the fence across the top of the stream. But in terms of trying to expedite the approval process, we've decided that we're going to submit right now just on the construction basis, and we will come back and present on the tree pruning and the other repairs that need to be done on the site, because we can do that. We don't want that to hold up what we're asking for now. So what we are asking for now is we've submitted this as a determination of applicability, and we're asking for a kind of a negative determination of applicability given the limited scope of the impact and the way that we're dealing with the increase in the impervious area. We're asking for a negative determination along with conditions as required by the commission. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Michael, I do. I heard what you said, that most of the work is in the front. Can you just go to the back of the house?
Yep.
And I know you said re-shingling.
Yep.
Is there any change?
So there's the bigger piece of that. So the drawing you want to look at that shows the rear of the house is either A 3.3, which is the rear view of elevation, but there's also a demolition drawing, which is D 1.2, which is the second to last sheet in the set. And that actually, the rear view is the upper left-hand view, and it shows exactly what needs to be demolished in terms of either relocating a window or work around the back porch, where we're going to replace all the decking on the stairs and the handrail and install some siding below the deck to enclose the area under the porch.
Now, help me out. On the existing, I'm trying to figure out, where do the stairs go on the new plan? Are they going directly towards the brook, or are they circling back and heading towards the front of the house?
So you're talking about the stairs on the rear of the house off the little porch?
Yes.
Okay, if you could look at the prior sheet, A 3.2. One more. Yeah, right there. So you can see the staircase along the rear left-hand end of the drawing.
Yes.
They basically come back along the house to the front. The proposal at this point is we're not doing any framing work. We're not reconstructing the stair unless in removing the finishes they find deterioration, in which case they'll replace it in kind. The goal is to really just replace the decking boards, remove the decking boards, remove the handrail using the existing structure, and then adding the skirt, basically the skirting around the entire perimeter of that porch. I would categorize this all as maintenance work because we're reusing the existing structure and we're just making repairs and improving the finishes more than, we're not disturbing the ground, we're not increasing the impervious area. It's really just upgrading the finishes.
So there's no footprint change in the rear?
No, there's no footprint change in the rear. There's no footprint change with the on the entire project, with the exception of the front porch and the steps, coming off the front porch to the all happening on the street side away from the brook.
All right, understood.
Okay.
Any questions from commissioners? Steve Ivas, any comment?
No, just that there is a fence next to those two large trees that has failed for a couple of sections. So you'll need to get to that soon, Michael. That's all.
Yeah. Well, we're aware of the fence issues, and the chain link fence across the top of the concrete wall, the retaining wall, and the wall itself needs some repairs.
Yes.
But just because we're trying to get the construction permit going for construction right away, the contractor's on board. This approval is really the last piece in being able to submit the drawings to the building department for permit. We decided to table all of the perimeter site issues, the trees, the retaining wall, the fence repairs. Table that for a separate piece because we can do that in a reasonable pace without delaying the progress of the work.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. Does anybody feel that there's a need for a site walk? I know the area and I'm comfortable with the work being done on the front of the house away from the brook. If it were on the back of the house, I'd probably want to take a look, but I don't see any pressing need for a site visit, but I'd be open to do so if anybody would like to do that. Hans, Wendy?
I don't feel the need to. I'm very familiar with it as well, and you can see it very easily from the street.
Thank you.
Jerry Burke?
No need.
Same here.
All right, good. So then I'm just trying to think of whether or not there would be any special conditions other than our typical boilerplate ones that would go along with a negative determination. And so the applicant knows and the public knows our usual concerns are with the storage of equipment within our buffer overnight or any refueling of equipment in that area or having hydraulic lines in the area. Those would go along with a negative determination. Do you have any erosion controls, sedimentation controls, anything in the back during the re-roofing process?
We haven't discussed that, but we're by all means would accept anything that you require. The reason I mentioned the window relocations and the re-roofing was because I honestly expected it to be debris coming off the roof. Not that any of that debris, I don't expect any of it to be migrating, other than just nails and shingles and that kind of stuff, which will need to be cleaned up. But if you feel that erosion control methods are necessary, by all means, that's something that we can include.
Steve, do you have any recommendations on that? The brook is right there, and we want to protect the brook, but I don't know whether or not a silt fence would do anything.
Maybe a dug-in silt fence would prevent nails from pouncing and bouncing across the back of the yard. You know, stuff coming off the roof. That's my only suggestion, really. I don't think you need any compost socks there or anything.
All right. Well, I'd be comfortable with the silt fence then.
Michael, does that make sense to you?
I was going to measure 1 minute. It may. I'm just going to measure the drawing to see how far the nearest corner of the back porch is roughly 30 feet from the edge of the brook.
Right.
So I honestly don't expect anything to go that far.
No, and neither do I.
Maybe we condition the roofers to not throw any nails into the brook.
Maybe it's not the nails we're worried about, it's the coffee cups, right? Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the retaining wall there too, right? I mean, that's,
but it's not high. It's actually very low to the ground.
Yes, it is. That's correct.
Yeah,
okay.
and there is a damage spot that we intend to repair going forward as part of the next kind of package. But it's really, I think in the long term, what we're adding for the dry well and the gutters and funneling it all back into the ground, I think that would make this a moot point. But during construction, I think it's not unreasonable.
How about instead of silt fence, a condition that says you must police the area every single day at the end of the workday?
Okay.
How's that? Another
that
suggestion.
That makes sense. But what about the excavation of the stormwater discharge area on the,
Okay,
Dry well.
true.
but I mean, you're gonna have equipment in there to dig that. How big are you talking about? How many? What's
I'm
the-
not, I have, at this point, I don't know what the absorption rate is. Honestly, I don't know. That's a calculation, the geotechnical engineer, we haven't pulled the trigger on that because the contractor's not ready to evaluate, to do the pit. Basically, they're gonna do a test pit exactly where it's gonna go and do the perk test. And once we have the number back from the perk test and the area calculation for the roof, they'll run a quick calculation and tell us what it needs to be. So I would expect it's in something in the kind of three square feet area. But if it's a bad perk, it might be as big as 4 feet square. But at this point, I really don't know.
Yeah. Or Michael, you could go with Caltex, the linear Caltex, of course.
Yeah, but we're trying to, my thinking was that if we just do something that's more of a traditional dry well, it minimizes the excavation.
Yes.
And honestly, the area of roof that we're talking about is not, I don't see it as significant. I'd be surprised if the dry well was bigger than 3 by 3, honestly.
Sure. All right.
Well, do we need any erosion controls around a hole of that size? That question goes to you, Steve.
Well, by all means, we can add that. I mean, that we're talking about something that's that small, plus they're gonna trench to put the pipes in. Maybe we're just talking about doing erosion control from the back, the right rear corner over to the edge of the property line during the course of that kind of putting that piping and the drywall in. That's you're probably only talking about.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Yes.
If you're going to have the excavation open for more than a day or two,
Yeah.
I would just install erosion controls.
Yeah.
So-
We're only talking about like 25 to 30 feet of material, so it's not.
Yeah.
This isn't significant by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, so if for any reason it ends up taking more than a day or two to complete, then, or
Then
you
they're there.
anticipate that, then
Yeah.
make sure it's protected.
Which is likely, right? Yeah.
Plus policing the area.
All right.
Yeah, plus policing the area. Okay.
And Steve, you've got those special conditions?
Yes, I do.
So with those special conditions, is there a motion to issue a negative determination contingent upon those special conditions that we've discussed?
So
So,
moved.
All right, Wendy moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jerry. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I,
Aye.
If I can back the train up for a minute, I should have asked before that vote. Are there any abutters or members of the public that have a comment or ask a question? Seeing and hearing none, thankfully.
Thank you very much.
Vote will stand.
We try to be quick, right?
Yes.
That's.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
Thank you
Michael, it's a
very much.
lovely improvement to the facade of the house.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're moving forward. Yeah.
All right,
Have a
thanks.
have a great evening.
You
It's
too.
been very
Thank
interesting
you.
being back and seeing everything go forward. 7-Eleven is still on the books. I'm amazed. Seriously, I'm just amazed.
Yes, it is. Next on the agenda is 15 Edward Avenue.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, but just barely.
Okay, my name is Chris Duffy. I live at 15 Edward Avenue, and my family and I are looking to put in a swimming pool, and we wanted to make sure that we were outside of the buffer zone, and wanted to do the notice of intent to see if that was the case, and to really determine if where that line would be. Again, we anticipate potentially putting next year in a fence or something like that. So we wanted to just, go with the pool right now and just see if we had any issues there, and then next year go in and do the fence later. So,
Can you orient me, if not us?
Yeah.
Edward Avenue, where's Edward Avenue?
yeah, so Edward Ave, if you're coming up Brook Road from East Milton Square, you make the left on Pleasant Street, it kind of curves, you had a stop sign.
Yes,
Windermere is a right,
yes.
Edward's a left behind it. So it's behind us is the Unkwitty Brook, and then the cemetery is back there. So
Right.
it's kind of a little corner. Does that help?
No, it does. I know right where Windermere is.
Okay.
And for the other members, there's a large valley here. It's directly behind, I believe it was 1117 Brook Road that you had in January or February of this year. There's a good sized valley there, and there's a stream that runs right through the valley.
Right. Yeah, I think you're referring to the construction that's going on the other side. Is that?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And when we were there, we actually saw the foam and couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It seemed to be coming out of the cemetery, but the foam was right near where the culvert was. When I read this, and it may be that I missed something in the package, but I don't see any calculations as to the distance to the wetlands. I don't know where the wetlands are.
Yeah, and I think that was an error on my part. And I don't know why I assumed that that there would be what am I looking for? A map, that kind of a master map or something for the town. But I measured the from the brook to the back of my property. That line across the top is 72 feet at the closest point, and so the pool, would be about 32 feet from the back of that property line. So you're looking about 104, 105 feet, give or take, before from the brook.
It may be my eyesight here, because I'm not seeing where you're measuring from.
Yeah.
What's the distance from the property line to the pool? Is that what 60?
Yeah. So on the left side of the pool that you're looking at there, left corner up, is 32 feet from there to the end of the property line, and then it goes down that valley, and the valley goes down to the brook, and that's 72 feet that I measured.
Okay. And what do you have for the proposed pool filtration system?
The filtration system is, it's the salt water, not the chlorine system. I know it obviously makes chlorine as well. I don't have the name of it. Hang on a second. Yeah, right here. Hayward filter, HP sand. Is that?
That's just the filter.
Okay. I apologize. I'm looking for the filtration system.
You know what? One of the things we would need a submission of that, because it's very important to us when you're that close to the wetlands. Some of these pools have discharge systems that they backwash the pool and they dump chlorine into the wetlands sometimes, and that's an issue for us. So we always try to get people to submit the manufacturer's specs, and we prefer closed filtration systems as to the ones that discharge and backwash. I heard what you said about the salt, but we're just concerned with how close you are to the wetlands. I would like to take a view, and if we put that out a couple of weeks, we can do it within a few weeks, generally speaking. I know I can, and we'll ask around. But I'd like to see some kind of a map, because the record itself doesn't show where the wetlands are. We need a record, because it's a public record. So we need to have some designation of where the wetlands are and then what the distance is.
Okay.
Could you put that together, and in the meantime, we can set up a date to come out and take a look at it?
Yeah, so I could certainly do that. So I guess, the question, the filtration system is one question, and then a drawing of where the wetlands are relative to the property.
Yes.
And I just don't see the name of the filtration system. And I guess the other thing I was asking, though, for purposes of just my understanding is that is there going to be a determination that's in or out of the buffer zone? And then if I go next year to do a fence, is this something that I can do that ahead of time, or is that something I have to do at the same time? Or do that
You
next
lost me
year?
on that. Yes, you have to do it ahead of time, but no,
Oh,
you
that's-
don't have to put them together. You can do the pool first and then the fence later on.
I apologize. I actually said it backwards. I'm not doing the fence now, but I guess I'm wondering is if I decide to do the fence, is there something I can do now ahead of time so that to get some kind of understanding of what I would have to do if just to put up a fence?
Yeah, I think you do have to do it to get the pool permit from the town. It's a safety reg, and I guess it's the Board of Health that requires it, but I know
Yeah.
you need a fence around the pool anyway, so you're probably better off doing it at the same time.
Well, they do a temporary fence right around the pool when they're doing it. And then the way, I guess the way they told me it settles, you want to do the deck work and other things after that. And then again, just financially, we're looking at doing a fence around the whole yard. But that's probably a next year project. But I guess I'm saying that I know is going to be closer to the brook. So is that something else, something separate I have to do, or can I get approval for that now, or an understanding of what?
You'd
what
have
that
to
is?
have it, you'd have to have it on the plan with
Okay.
all the distances plotted and, what the fence is made out of, things of
Okay.
that nature.
All right, so then-
And I'm looking at what you've done here, but the problem for us is that, and I don't want to sound like I'm putting form over substance here, but we do look for a public record that demonstrates that the engineers have calculated this. And I really don't see any official construction plan here. I see 50 by 34 feet, but that looks
Yeah.
like something that you drew in yourself.
No,
Do
no,
you have a contractor or an architect or somebody that's a civil engineer that's actually given you a plan for the construction?
So no, I had not done that for the construction of the pool. So I guess I guess so I'm just a little bit I'm not sure exactly who I should, so I could get the information about the specs of the pool, but then I guess is a surveyor that I would have to contact then, I guess, to find out where the pool is situated?
Well, an engineer can do it. A surveyor could do it as well. We generally require a stamped plan to be approved to accompany a notice of intent.
All right.
And that's, an engineer can do that. It's not a complicated task, and I
All right.
try not to drive your costs up because I appreciate, the homeowner, and especially doing it in phases. But for our purposes, we do need to have a stamped plan accompany your notice of intent.
Okay.
And that same person could put in the distance to the where the wetlands are. Now, sometimes the wetlands, you need a separate wetland scientist to designate where it is. But
Okay.
if you've got a top of bank calculation, that's generally pretty easy to do.
Okay.
But I don't know what the stream looks like. I really
Okay.
don't. And that would help us if we were out there to see it.
Sure. Okay, so again, I just want to get my notes here correct. So the filtration system, a stamp plan from the engineer, and on the stamp plan for the engineer, there will be a clarity around the distance to the wetlands.
Yes.
Okay.
And can I ask the members of the commission if anybody's available this Saturday, next Saturday, some Saturday? We generally, for your benefit, we generally meet on Saturday mornings. Depends on what time people want to get up, but lately it's been 8:30 instead of the good old days at 8 o'clock. But we tend to go out and we'll just stop by your house and just go out and eyeball it. It's not.
I thought we were saying 9, John.
9.
I'm pretty sure it was 9.
Any of the above is fine with me. We're not going anywhere these days, so.
That's true. That's true. And we will be masked in gowns and socially distant from everybody there. How about, today is the 23rd. How about this Saturday? I am available. Anybody else?
That's a yes from me, John.
Okay.
I'm available too.
I am too.
Jerry, Wendy?
Yes, I believe I am.
Perfect. So we'll see you at 9 o'clock, Wendy?
Yes,
Is that-
please.
9 o'clock on Saturday morning at your house.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right? That's perfect. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can gather the data in time. If you do, that we can take a look at it and vote. It's a public meeting.
Okay.
We just have to make sure that we announce it and give the appropriate public notice. If it takes you longer than that to get it, we can put it on the agenda for the July meeting, which is the 14th of July.
Okay, well, I will try to get it by Saturday, but if not, then I guess July, but I'll see you Saturday anyway.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, 15.
What's the date? The 27th.
7th.
27th.
27.
Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent at 23 Hillcroft.
Hi, how you doing? Jonathan Morrison here, representing 23 Hurlcroft, the homeowner.
Hey,
Jonathan, is this the correct plan, Jonathan?
Correct. Thanks, Steve.
Certainly.
All right, can you just describe the project for us and kind of walk us through the application?
Yeah, sure thing. So there's an existing deck off the back left of my house, and we're literally just taking the deck out and just replacing the deck with a one-story addition. It's going to be supported by about 10 sonotubes, so minimal damage to the ground area, and or minimal disturbance to the ground area, I should say. And right to the left of that existing deck, I have a current addition already there on the back right of my house. So I'm just kind of squaring off the back left of my house with a one-story addition. That's just going to be a kitchen addition, extension of my current kitchen. And the back property line there, I back right up to that the Ponce River Reservation. I believe it's called Gulliver's Creek. And we filed a notice of intent just because I believe we're definitely pretty much in the buffer zone. Outside of the 25 feet, I believe it's that right corner, the back right corner of my house right there is about 26, 27 feet from the upper bank there of the back property line. So, just filing the notice of intent, just going through our due diligence here before we go forward with any, town permits, building permits, that sort of thing.
That's good, and I thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. We've had other people along Hillcroft do the same, so this is consistent. If we're out on Saturday morning, can we take a look at this as well, commission members?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. That would, Jonathan, that would be about 9:30, 9:20 at your house if we stop by this Saturday morning to take a look at it.
Thank you.
All right, and what the property line is there a stone wall there, or is just the phragmites go right up to the edge, or what's back there? Is it a fence?
No, nothing back there. Just some slight bushes, like some forsythia bushes that edge right on my back line there, and then right behind those there's some kind of just stones in the ground that kind of just mark, like my neighbor has a fence, so you can kind of see it, like the property line. It's just kind of in line with the upper bank, the top of bank,
Okay.
And it drops down into the creek by probably 5 or 6 feet or something like that, Jonathan?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you saw that when you're out here, Steve. Thanks again.
Exactly.
Coming out that day.
One administrative note, it doesn't have a file number yet. You might want to check with DEP. Have you paid your DEP fees?
Yep, we paid our DEP fees.
Okay.
We filed that about end of May, around May 22nd. So we just didn't get one back from them, like a file number back from them right away. But I can double check with DEP again to hopefully maybe they have a file number for us.
Yeah, you may want to do that this week. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, you will, because we can't issue a permit unless you've got a DEP number.
Okay, thanks.
But, you know, usually they'll be responsive on the phone.
Yes.
Are there any questions in advance of Saturday's site walk by any commissioners? Are there any
No, sir.
abutters, members of the public that have a question or comment? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll continue this until Saturday morning, this coming Saturday at about 9:30 or so, okay?
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, good, thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is notice of intent at 175 Milton Street. Steve, you may, well, let's see who's here, but I know Steve has been right on top of this, so you can provide some extra data for us.
Here we are.
Dave, you're here, Dave Crispin?
Yes.
Good. Good.
Yes.
Excellent.
I've been patiently watching your exciting evening.
Wow, really?
I think Mr. Green was here earlier, and I think Mr. Curran was here, one of the couple of trustees for this site. I got about 20 very quick pictures or images to show you, kind of walk you through this. 175 Milton Street, we're looking at doing some water harvesting and minor drainage improvements on the site. Next slide, Steve. Just back up one, please. This was the site that we had a fine for altering the wetlands, you may recall, about a year ago. The certificate of compliance was issued. Ultimately, the fine was paid. There was some confusion between the contractor and the owner and whatnot, but that got resolved. The fine got paid. And today, I recorded the certificate of compliance. So this was done finally. Unfortunately, Norfolk is the only registry in Massachusetts that will not take electronic filings. You have to go there and leave your document in a little mailbox out front. So that part of it is done. You may recall we put a groundwater dewatering trench in to protect one of the buildings in doing that. Well, as we've watched that, next slide, Steve, for the last year, let's go forward instead of that one.
Yep.
That is the outlet to that dewatering trench. And we've been looking at it for over a year. Every time I've gone there, it's been flowing about 3 gallons a minute. And if we look at the next slide, I think we get the big overview picture of what we're talking about. Milton Street is across the top of the site. Oops, where we go.
Yeah.
Blue Hill Avenue, 138 there is on the right side. And 175 Milton Street is that big wooded and cleared area. There are 3 areas in there, which I've defined as Area 1, Area 2, and Area 3. I'd like to talk about Area 3 first, which is over on the left side. Steve and I had a couple of email conversations. There are no wetlands over there, so this is outside the buffer zone, and it's kind of for information. But if you jump to the next slide, Steve, I will walk you through the Area 3, and just that's where we are, is over in that corner. Next slide. And we should see some downspouts and coming off of the building, and you see the driveway, which was repaved about a year ago. When they repaved that driveway, we put sleeves under the pipe, under the pavement, with the intention of hooking the roof drains up to get it across the driveway to stop icing problems and whatnot. And there's 5 or 6 of them. I think they show up in the next slide. That's the backyard. The backyard of that building over there has some problem, but whoop. You get quick fingers, Steve.
It's the mouse, Dave.
It's the mouse. Okay. Let's see if we can get to the next one. It's got some red and yellow.
There you go,
yes.
right there.
The red lines there are existing 4-inch pipes under the driveway. The yellow ones are what are going to connect to it. So you can see the red ones just basically went under the pavement and stopped. We need to extend it a little bit to make sure that it breaks daylight. We're outside the buffer zone. We're not changing the hydrology. We're just eliminating some puddles and ice problems in the driveway. Let's go to, I think Area 1 is the next one,
yep,
which is in the northeast corner of the site there. Let's go to the next slide. That just kind of gets you the general picture where we are. This is what that area looks like pretty much every spring. And Mr. Green, I don't know if he's still on or not, but he lives right there and looks at this every year. And I will wrap this up at the end, but he's been telling me it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Well, we want to, if you go to the next slide, Steve, put in a 4-inch collection system with these plastic yard drains, which are in the upper left-hand corner, and tie it into the existing drain that was put in last year, and just get rid of those puddles out there. This will be put in with a ditch witch, probably. No extensive alteration. And the reason this darker area is shown as darker green, that's one of the areas we want to irrigate at the end of the day. So we're going to specifically irrigate areas that dry out, not the ones in the deep shade that don't need it. So next slide, Steve. Area 2. This is where all the fun stuff is. Those last two were completely outside the buffer zone, but they're of good information. And if you look at all the dark green areas on this, you can see the areas that we are looking to irrigate. That's about an acre of lawn. And if you come in the building, you see the nice front lawn with big beech trees there. It really enhances. They have been watering this to date with I won't call them handheld sprinklers, but the ones that you put out at the end of a hose, and you turn it on and you run it for a while and you shut it off and you roll it up and put it beside the house. So that's not the most efficient way of doing it. So let's go down to area 2, which is the end of the trench that we put in. Steve, is zero in there. And you may recall the yellow, solid yellow line is that trench that went in, and it is in the wetlands. If you look at this wetlands, it is a lawn. It's not like skunk cabbages and shrubs. It is a mowed lawn, but that's the way the soils and water table and stuff was delineated. So at the bottom of that yellow line, the intention is to put in a overflow manhole with a pipe going to the left in a 5,000 gallon tank, which we can reclaim water and use for irrigation. The dotted lines are simply the 2-inch lines that'll come from a pump and go up to the various irrigation lines. But that being all in the buffer zone, I thought we should show it. Just below that, there is a little depression. I'm calling it a quote unquote pond. It's not big enough to technically be a pond. I believe it's man-made. It's held together, contained by a masonry small dam. I think it was probably built when this was a monastery years and years ago. Next slide, Steve, and I think this will give us a little cross-sectional picture. Oh, that's the area that we're in the wetlands. You can see that this picture was taken a couple of years ago when it was first flagged, but it's lawn, and that's the area we're working in.
And I agree with it, because I was there 10 years ago and flagged the same exact line.
So this is a very quick cross-section of how we want to do this. A small manhole, and I expect this manhole will be a high-density polyethylene 24-inch diameter pipe with a cover on the top of it. And the reason we want to do that is so we can put a filter to collect anything that comes down that dewatering trench. Some of it comes off the roof drains, some of it will come off the new yard drains in the section we talked about in area 1, and filter that before it goes into a tank for the reclamation. Now, if my calculations are right, we've got somewhere between 3 and 4 gallons a minute. 3 and 4 gallons a minute comes out to about 5,000 gallons a day. That will basically put an inch of water over an acre of lawn every week, which is, in my experience, an average irrigation system. When the big tank is full, it'll bubble out the top and go where it is now, which is symbolized by those black circles to the left of the manhole, and it goes down the embankment and into the pond, and it goes where it goes now. We have recommended that this be done with a plastic tank, 5,000 gallon tank. If it was concrete, it's going to be several tons, and this is way in the back of the site. So a plastic tank like this with dead man braces can be carried by a small backhoe and put in place with minimal effort on the part of the contractor. And I think that is it. So next slide, just say questions. Oh yeah, okay. So it doesn't change the hydrology of the site. We think we can get about 4,000 gallons a day, which I said will irrigate an acre with an inch of water every week. This saves quite a bit on the public water supply. And what's driving this is the water bill that the condominium is getting. So low maintenance, very temporary site impacts. And one last little issue that Steve and I have been talking about, I don't know if this has made it to the commission, but this is Hemingway Pond across the street. As I mentioned, Mr. Green said to me that this is getting worse and worse and worse. And I finally went over and looked at Hemingway Pond, and this is the outlet to Hemingway Pond. The brush that is around the outlet has created, what was the word you used, a fox beaver dam? Steve, you faux.
French word for false. That's all.
Yeah, but it's an accumulation of sticks and leaves, and it's turned into a dam around the outlet of that. I know there have been conversations with DCR about having them try and clean this up, because if we go to the next slide, Steve, we actually went out this last week and we shot the water level on the pond. Water level was 114.2. The town GIS map has it at 112.7. Now, according to your GIS manager, that data was generated in 2012. So in 8 years, the pond has come up 1.5 feet. I expect that the actual invert of that culvert going under Blue Hill Avenue might be another foot lower. Don't know for sure, because physically, if you saw that last image of the faux beaver dam, it's probably treacherous to try and crawl down in there until that's remediated. So just with that last slide, that 114.2 contour is in red around the pond. There is about a half an acre of land between the blue line and the 114 contour, telling me that this site is spreading and altering BVW, and the 114 contour that goes on the left side of Blue Hill Avenue is the same elevation. That is where the picture with the flooded lawn is. I believe that the pond is artificially raising the water table over there. And even though we've asked him permission to go do all of this work, if they do the beaver dam remediation and the water table dries up and we stop getting water out of this pipe, I can't in good conscience recommend to my client to spend the money to do the rest of the project. But we're seeking permission for it anyway. Maybe it won't change that flow significantly at all and it'll still all be worthwhile. But you know, if we get a permission to do it, we don't have to do it. It's just permission to do it. One last slide there. I think the last one, Steve. That's the question one. There it is, Hemingway Pond. This was taken last Friday. You see trees that are in 2 feet of water there.
Wow.
That's what's happening around the pond. So with a hat in a hand, we're hoping you can maybe ask DCR to maybe take care of their outlet a little bit. And if they can do that, we can decide whether or not we ultimately follow through with construction on the rest of that project.
Hey, Dave, I might be lost here, but if the outlet is cleaned on Hemingway Pond and the water level drops, isn't that going to put more water onto 175 Milton Street?
No, I don't think it will. I think it'll change the delay timing that goes out there, perhaps.
There'll probably be an initial flush, but
doesn't it flow in that direction?
It all flows in that direction, but it's not changing the watershed. It's not changing the surface runoff characteristics. All it's doing is lowering the control point back to what I believe it was, at least in 2012, as is evidenced by the GIS elevation at 112.7.
Which is probably the elevation of the top of the water control structure.
I think it's actually lower. I think this thing has probably been building for a number of years.
Yeah, and the stream itself, for everybody's information, the stream comes under Blue Hill Ave here and then heads in a, let me see, this would be a westerly direction, right down a little channel. It does not move.
Right to the Neponset.
Yes, exactly. That's correct.
It doesn't actually impact 175 at all. It's down the hill from it.
That's right. That's right.
Why wouldn't it, if the water is being dammed on the east side of Blue Hill Avenue, and the water table is going up, why wouldn't that dry out the west side where 175 Milton is?
I believe everything to the right of the red lines that are right along there to the right is all inundated and raised water table from the damming of the pond.
And not only that, Dave, but it's good soils. It's a very transmissive soil. So water moves through this soil extremely rapidly. Okay, this is an esker. It's probably an esker, right there. You see, and this was probably a kettle hole right here. The pond was a kettle hole right next to an esker. Canton Ave is another esker. You see, if you look at it from a geomorphological standpoint, it's pretty neat. It's very.
I know that part isn't really part of our project, but if you could ask a favor and ask them to clean that out. The condo association really didn't feel it was their position to go over and do maintenance on DCR property.
And for everybody's benefit, I have had a number of discussions with Carl Pastore, the regional superintendent of DCR. And he promised me he'll get to it, but he didn't promise when.
But is there any concern with downstream flooding? Or is it just a temporary event? If you release that dam and you drop the water level by 1.5 feet, the water's going to go downstream.
Yes.
Where does it go?
It goes right into the existing channel right now, and it may overflood the channel, but there's nothing downstream. There's no built housing downstream, is there, Dave?
Not that I know of. No, I would have to expect that when they remove this, they're going to have to do it slowly.
Right.
You know, take a foot off and lower the pond a little bit, and take another foot off and lower it down a little more.
That's a lot of water.
Well, I'm guessing that summer is the time to do it. Isn't that right, Steve?
Absolutely.
When
This would be
things
the
are
right. This
drying
is the
out?
right time. Yeah.
Like,
And
I
there are
went
more.
to Palmetto and was shocked at how dry it's gotten just in 2 weeks' time.
Right. Now this is the right time to do it. And as of last week, I was looking at it last week. It's still pretty high there. I was very surprised, actually.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, well, I half hope that they lower the water table and it doesn't really impact the 3 gallons a minute out of the end of my pipe, because there's a significant savings in water and sewer bills for this project to go forward for the condo.
Sure.
Now, David, could you explain? You had started to say that was the driving force behind this project, with the condo owners wanting to get some relief on their water bills. But I don't understand, why is this costing them money on their water bills?
When you hook your faucet up to irrigate your lawn, which they like to do, I don't know if you've been on the project, it's quite nice in there. And they do irrigate the lawns, particularly in front of the main house. As you come in, it's a spacious lawn that has the big house in front of it. We've looked at the water use bills for the last 7 years, and it is thousands of dollars per year that is attributed to irrigation.
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't know, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but like 35% of it's water and 65% of it is sewer bill. So you're paying for both of them, whether you're using them or not.
Yep. Yep.
So after a study, we decided, hey, this was worth doing. And then Mr. Green says, this is getting worse and worse. Something's going on with that pond over there. And lo and behold, I went over and took a look, and the conversation started a couple months ago about, hey, we got a dam here. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anybody want to take a look at this on Saturday?
Absolutely.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
So can we do this at 10 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, good.
If you pull in the driveway at 175 Milton, to the left of that blue star, there is a parking space right there, Steve. Yeah, right there. They can pull in, and should be enough room for cars.
Perfect. All right.
And I'll let the condo people know that you guys are coming, and I'll plan on meeting you if you'd like me to come.
That would be great if you could.
Yeah.
Sure.
Will we be allowed to go to the pond as well?
It's a little bit of a walk, but yeah, we can walk over there.
We like walking.
We could stop at the pond first. There is parking along Blue Hill Ave on the eastern side, not proceeding
if you're brave.
northbound. Pardon?
If you're brave.
Oh, no, there's fine. It's enough. It's enough. It's wide enough for a vehicle plus.
It is. Oh, okay.
Yes, it is. I know it because I've been there a number of times in the past month or so.
All right, fair enough.
So we could start there and then go over. Whoops.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Are there any abutters or members of the public that want to question or make a comment? Seeing none, then let's plan to meet at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Will that be a continued public hearing? Or are we going to reconvene this at another time?
No, that will be the reconvening of this public hearing. It'll be announced as a public hearing, and we'll have an agenda identifying it as such.
Very good, my friend.
All right.
Thank you for your patience.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
See you Saturday.
Yep, signing off.
All right, next on the agenda is 152 Robin Street.
Let's see, number 9. Doesn't it go down here? There you go.
Hey, Steve, before we get, can you just help me out here on this 652 Blue Hill Avenue? It was in the paper today. What's the name of the applicant on that case? We did an RDA there last, whatever, fall. Maybe it was later than that. Maybe it was December or so.
Let me see if I have it in my files. Okay, one moment. Is it 6? It's
652? I thought it was 652. It's right. It's around there.
Some other number. Let me just take a quick look in the master file.
Could be 682, but I thought that was an incorrect.
580. I think it's 582.
And I know there was a mistake in the paper today.
Yes, that's correct. 582. That was Blue Hills Parkway, right? I do not have it.
It's Blue Hill Avenue.
Yeah, Blue Hill. No, that's Blue Hill Parkway, not Blue Hill Ave. Yeah, no, I don't have it. I don't have any documents on it, John.
Okay, no, I looked at 152 and it said Lands of the Community in Boston, LLC. And I was trying to remember it was a similar type of name for the Blue Hill Avenue project, because that backs up to this project. So in the photographs in this plan, that's what you're looking at.
No, it doesn't. You're talking this project here?
Yes, if you look over to the right, that's where the new project is being planned off of Blue Hill Avenue.
Blue Hill Avenue?
Yes.
Are you sure? I thought it was Blue Hills Parkway.
No?
The Ice House. That was the Ice House property, wasn't it?
No, well, no, the Blue Hills Parkway is the Ice House. But
right.
The reference in today's paper was to the 40B project.
Oh, okay. So that was, yes, okay. I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
Delphi Academy, which abuts this property.
Yes, it's to the north and west of this property, right in here, this area right here. That's correct. Right across from our friends at 591, 593.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Which they have started on, by the way, all. They've started working on that one again. And they have created, while you're looking at the plan, they've created a swale and a berm on the downstream side parallel to Vos Hill Avenue, which will help with water that was moving from that property straight through a property on Vos Hill. So that I believe is being corrected now, which is great.
All right, good. All right, I didn't mean to divert from this. Who is here in support of this project? Do we have anybody, Steve?
I don't know. There was a John, I'm sorry, I've forgotten his last name. He was instructed last month to come back with a survey plan. And here's the garden, which is, let's see, 30 by 60. There's the stream, the intermittent stream coming down. And then there's the material he wants to move over to here.
I'm sorry, he wants to move what?
This pile of soil material. Remember the bricks and soil here?
I do.
He would like to move it to here. I have not been on the site for over a month, so I don't know whether that has been moved yet or not. But you gave him the okay to do some planting in the garden.
Yes, we did, and he agreed to move it back from the brook. Was it 30 feet or 25 feet?
Back from the brook, that's correct. And it looks like that's what he's done.
All right, so why don't we do this? Since there's no applicant here to do this, and we've been out there before, but can you just, at some time between now and Saturday, take a drive by there to see what the condition of, A, the debris that he wants to move, and B, the garden that we told him to go ahead and you could start? Because I just want to make sure it's far enough away from the brook, because when they first came in with their sort of informal chart or plan,
yes,
it was right up next to the brook, and he agreed to move it away from the brook, so we didn't have a 25-foot issue.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
All right, and then we'll, we'll be meeting in 175
On Saturday.
Oakland Street. So if we need to, we can take a look at it, or we can just vote. This is an RDA. So I think we could probably, as long as we put it on the agenda for Saturday, we could take care of it or respond to any concerns that you might have in looking at it.
Sure.
Okay. With that said, then, with no applicant here, we'll continue this until Saturday, the 27th. Next on the agenda is, well, I should stop and say, are there any questions from commissioners or members of the public or abutters? Hearing none, we move to the next item on the agenda, which is 999 Randolph Avenue, which is the Wollaston Golf Course.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
I can't see you. Is that Kelly?
It is.
Welcome. Even though I don't see you.
So, and I think that I have Charles Grandin, who is the
Yes, I'm
general
here.
manager.
I'm
Okay.
here, Kelly. Thank you.
Perfect.
No, perfect. Thanks for your patience.
So when we were before you on the 18th, Wollaston requested a 3-year extension of Order 046-225, which is to permit management of the aquatic nuisance vegetation. This is the same order that has been extended since 1998. The commission asked a couple of things. The first is that no glyphosate be used at the site between the time May 18th till now, and the club has abided by that. It hasn't been used. And you'll recall that that's something that we're not asking to be continued to be used in this extension. And then there was some additional information. So today I submitted to you the information that you asked for. The first was the license to apply chemicals, and it's dated June 1st of 2020. I apologize that you didn't get it to the end of the day. The person from DEP who does this is working from home, issued the license a while ago, but dated it July 1st. So then we had to go back and ask that he reflect that it was actually done June 1st. And he didn't have a scanner, and he didn't have a phone. So he had to wait for him to drive it to deliver it to people today. So that's the world we live in, I guess. I just want to point out that it includes one additional product, not a new chemical, but just a new named product. So I had asked you for Reward, which is Diquat, Captain, which is a liquid copper, and Sonar, which is fluoridone, and then Clearcast, which is imazimov. I'm also now asking for you to include Nautique, which is also a liquid copper because it's on the license that was issued by DEP. The second thing that you asked for was that the application be submitted so that you could see what it is that people ask DEP for. Since the process is now all online, it's very difficult to print a copy, and Solitude didn't have a copy of the application, but what they did have was a copy of last year's application. So what you're seeing now, thank you, Steve, is the 2019 application, because it was a typed form that you could then submit. It's identical to the 2020 application. The next thing in the package are the safety data sheets for two products. One is the Nautique, which is the liquid copper, because I hadn't submitted that to you before. And the second is the surfactant that is used. You might remember that we talked about imazimov being a foliar application. So they go in the boat, they put the imazimov onto the actual leaves that are in the pond, but they need a surfactant to kind of stick it to it. And so I've included the safety data sheet for MSO concentrate with Lesitec, which is the surfactant that's used. And then there's like 13 pages of safety data sheets, but if we can get past that, the very last thing is the information on the wildlife. So if we keep going.
There we go.
Steve, go to the end if you would, and we'll look at the site plan quickly.
Sure.
So this is the same plan that you've seen before. Pond 1 is the irrigation pond. It's about 10 acres. The ponds get smaller as we go on this plan to the left. And you'll see pond 6 is the smallest of the ponds. Everything we have for information about the habitats and the species that are present here apply really to ponds 1 through 5. When we get to pond 6, it's too small to support fish. It's just too hot and they can't live there. But they certainly do live everywhere in the ponds 1 through 5. So if we can go back now to the pictures, they're in no particular order. But in May and June of this year, staff at Wollaston photographed the wildlife, and I know Charles will give him some of the photo credits here. And we also talked to Solitude Lake Management about what they have for historical wildlife evidence. So the representative photos include basically a large suburban area of open space, and it supports mammals, deer, raccoons, squirrels, coyotes. Oh, stop there. This one on the right-hand side is a barnacle goose, which is fairly rare here. So I'm told that there were quite a number of birders who were here over the winter because a barnacle goose decided to hang out with the Canadian geese that are here. They've observed, these are duck eggs for the mallards. If we go up a little bit, there are egrets, woodpeckers. You can see here the red-winged blackbird attacking a swan.
Those two are there every day.
And are they ever friends, Charles?
No, they fight.
So there's a great blue heron, largemouth bass, green frogs, and bullfrogs. I don't have pictures of the bullfrogs, but we can definitely hear them. 2 or 3 pairs of Baltimore Orioles, the bluebirds that Judith had talked about last time. That's an awesome picture of a dragonfly. So kudos to their staff member who was able to take that picture. The butterfly on the rhododendron. There's a bee, I think is here on the asphalt.
Yeah.
So this is, there's also some vultures here. So I think your goal was to figure out what do ponds look like if they've been managed for pondweed and algae with pesticides for like 22 years. Here's the turtles, snapping turtles, painted turtles, And so this is what they found. I think it's evidence that there is a functional food web going on here. We see red-winged blackbirds that are eating the damselflies and the dragonflies. We know that there are predator fish at the site that are likely eating the frogs. So in all of the microhabitats that we looked at, we're seeing that there are species living here. So I'm hoping that this fairly cursory review is what you were hoping to see. There was some question about salamanders, and I just have to tell you that to get staff to kick over the logs and take a picture fast enough to see the salamanders, unless we get some professionals out there who are more patient than staff. No offense here, Charles. I don't think we're going to get you some pictures.
Do the best we could.
So I'm hoping this is what you wanted.
It's certainly what I wanted. So that's a great job.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've done a great job demonstrating the habitat value there, and that it's functioning well, you know, in a managed system.
Thank you.
Wendy, any questions or comments?
Yeah, Kelly, I'm wondering if you could please explain what kind of efforts have you all done to try to minimize the use of chemicals in maintaining these ponds? It sounds to me like we're just you're asking to sort of continue with business as usual, but I'm wondering if there have been any efforts to try to reduce the use of chemicals over time.
So we have actually the Nautique that's requested here is a product that they have asked for, but haven't used in the last 4 years. They put it on the license application for DEP 4 years ago because it's a copper product, but they only use what they need when they get there. So if they see algae, they use the algicide. If they find that the pond weed is getting out of control, they'll apply it there. But they really don't apply any more than they need to for a couple of reasons. One is cost, because the club pays for what's been applied, and the other is they basically treat what they see when they arrive. So it changes from year to year. They're not using glyphosate anymore, and they don't intend to use it again. And so they ask for materials to be used, but they don't always apply them.
Has there been any change in the amount of fertilizer that's been applied that might be feeding the algae in the ponds?
No, the fertilizer, it's been the same golf course superintendent for many years. And they work really hard to spoon feed everything here, because the more nitrogen you apply, the more you have to mow, and then the more you have to manage clippings. So they're very careful to do tissue testing on a regular basis to evaluate what's needed and really only use what they have to use.
Have you guys tried any mechanical methods for controlling the plant growth in the ponds?
Yes, so about, I have to think of how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, Pond 6 was really, the amount of vegetation was really, really high. So there was an order that was issued for hydro raking. I'd have to go back and look at exactly how many years ago it was. But by having the hydro rake go in there and remove whatever vegetation there was and then physically take that away, we found that pond is a lot healthier than it was before. So that's the only time that they've done any mechanical means, but they did do it on Pond 6, and as a way of trying to improve that, because it really was the most shallow pond that they have.
Since it was so successful, is that something that you might consider replicating in the other 5 ponds as a way to minimize the use of chemicals?
it's something that we could take a look at. I know that it doesn't work on algae, and I spoke with the superintendent today, and right now there haven't been any applications this year, but the issue that they're having is algicide, and it isn't because they didn't have a permit. It's simply because the contractor hasn't been able to get there. We could talk about the other, whether or not it makes sense for the other species that we're seeing. Maybe
I know you had said that like lily pads was a big concern,
but
you
they
know,
haven't treated lily pads in 3 years.
Okay.
So they don't treat everything for every year, but we ask for a 3-year review because that's what you can grant us.
Understood.
They're going to come on Saturday.
I know that a lot of the lakes and ponds associations around the state use, I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're kind of like little bubbler systems that they use in some of the shallow areas. And from what I've seen, they're quite effective.
So we have one in the irrigation pond.
Okay.
It's a fountain, but it works in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Actually, we have 2 now, Kelly. We also have one in Pond 6.
So, so that's something that they've used as needed.
And what that helps is dissolved oxygen.
Oh.
Right.
Well, is that something that maybe you might consider in all of the ponds?
We could look at the economics of getting electricity and everything to all of those ponds, but that would be quite a project because of their remote nature to that. You know, as they're spread across 100 acres or so, 16 acres of water spread across 150 acres, 6 different ponds. We could look at the economics of it, but I think that's kind of what it comes down to for some of these projects. You know, like you're talking, physically eradicating the lilies and things like that. Sometimes the chemical application is much more easy to apply in the remote locations rather than getting in with a mechanical device and harvesting these products out. But always up for looking at the economics of both options.
So the water bubbler isn't going to help the lily pads. Mechanical harvesting might do that, but I know that has not been a significant problem in the last few years.
It would just seem to me that, you know, sort of changing the approach and focusing on limiting the fertilizer input and maybe focusing on some of these other more mechanical methods, while maybe they may be more an additional expense. I would think that it would save you money in the long run, but more importantly, from our perspective, you know, adding less chemicals to that sensitive environment is certainly one of the things that we care about.
Sure, and again, appreciate that. The only other issue with it is when these plants are all really like now is our golf season. If there was a way we could attack them in the off season effectively, we'd be open to looking at that. But unfortunately, like a lot of these applications are topical and post-emergent, where we're not really treating the water, we're treating the plant once it's on the surface and visible and accessible. That would be, look at it, but that might be tough to do in the golf season.
And just remember, everyone, that plants grow faster in hot weather than they do in the cooler weather.
Yeah.
So that's the issue that you run into with this kind of work.
Wendy, you've asked a lot of good questions. I wonder if there's a way to, move forward with kind of an object in, a goal to impose best management practices, something that sort of acknowledges the attempt to reduce the use of chemicals, but acknowledging the need, at least currently. I mean, is there anything that we can build into this permit that would, call upon Wollaston to attempt to achieve some of the goals that you've stated?
Good question, John. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, no, other than, and I think, Kelly is probably the right person to do it because she seems to be up to date on all of the new techniques. But if there is a way to shift away from chemicals towards like the mechanical, I remember that rake in Pond 6, because I think you brought in some pictures of the machinery. They had these big pontoon tires. It was really an interesting device. But I don't know if that would work in the deeper pond. Pond 1, I suspect, is fairly deep.
Pond one is fairly deep. So there's an integrated pest management approach to maintenance of the golf course. And so what the superintendent does is he goes out and he looks for the pests that are visible there. So instead of saying, I'm going to apply, this product, whatever it is, every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks or whatever the effective date is, he looks at what the pests are there and he bases it based on what he knows. He's been there long enough. He says, okay, I know in June, I can push the turf a little bit more because I don't have the same pest pressures that I'm going to have in August. When I talked to him today, he said, we've been a lot of days without water. And interestingly enough, I have more people taking carts than I've had in the past because we only have one person per cart. So he's starting to see the pressures on his turf are a little bit greater this year than they might be in other years. And so he's trying to compensate by what we call cultural practices. Can I push people around on different parts of the golf course? Can I align the carts with ropes so that they work differently? Are there some ways that I can aerate the turf? All those things to keep the plant healthy. And he takes a similar approach to the ponds. It's primarily done by the Solitude consultants. But I think that part of what they do is to say, I only apply what I need to apply when I get there. And there was someone who came last Thursday and did a review and didn't make any applications last Thursday for Solitude. They didn't do the algae, and I'm told today, and Charles, you can probably affirm this, that the algae looks pretty bad in at least some of the ponds. But when they were there last Thursday, they determined that they didn't need to apply anything.
Yeah, it's a little chunky today, if you look at it. And, as we take this approach to everything, I mean, even as extensively as we've approached the Phragmites in infringing on the property, we treat those literally by hand in the fall with the recommended processes that Steve helped us establish last year. And we're seeing some nice success there. So, we're treating each plant individually. Also, this spring, Dave was a little short on staff. We're limited to the staff we could bring in. So, we didn't even apply a lot of our fertilizers until late into the game, where to the point people were getting concerned about, the color of the fairways and things. But the bent grass was doing really well, but the Poana grass was being stressed out by the heat and lack of water, and it was kind of dying out, but it actually produces a better, healthier bent grass that we like for golf. And then once he applied just a little bit of the fertilizer, a little bit of nitrogen, boy, they just popped up green, really nice. They look beautiful now. So, we do try to manage each part of each individual nuance of the course the best we can. And I really appreciate, what you're saying, Wendy. And I'm new to the club. I've only been here a year now, and working with Kelly and Dave, you know, we're looking to really find more natural ways to approach these things and work with you on this. And Steve has also been a wealth of knowledge. So anything we can do together to work on this, we'd really like to keep this going. And but for right now, this is kind of the answer for us, and we'd appreciate your.
Well, I know that turf management is an evolving science, and I appreciate. It sounds like you guys are really working hard to keep up with the times. I'm just hopeful that we can continue collaborating with you to keep up with the newest and best of the management practices, and hopefully implement you know, the newest and best science.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Wendy, is there any kind of a gold standard that we could put in some language? And I'm not suggesting just putting in some happy talk, but saying something like that, you know, the course shall commit to the use of best management practices in accordance with, is there some association of golf course management or some kind of a gold standard? Steve, you might be familiar with something.
Must be.
What is it?
So pond management is not typically covered by the golf course management. There would be GCSAA, Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, and then the local and regional affiliates. But pond management isn't. But there is the DEP requirements for pond management. Hold on, which are the ones that are already referenced in the order of conditions. So there's a commitment in there that we will conduct the work consistent with the generic environmental impact report for eutrophication and aquatic plant management in Massachusetts. And that we will also comply with the guidance for aquatic plant management in lakes and ponds issued as DEP policy guideline BRP DWM WWGO 4-1. So the work that they're doing and the fact that they have to go to DEP annually for a license is in compliance with the state's policies. And they're not simply for golf course ponds. These are all ponds, even DCR ponds. Now, granted, given what I just saw about DCR managing that other pond, maybe that's not a high standard, but that is the language that the state provides us now. And that's what they work with. Steve, do you have any other references?
I do not, Kelly, I do not. But I do know that the DCR pond, Houghton's Pond, has to comply with those same standards. The swimming pond, of course. Yeah, I would say that those standards are pretty good standards. I've read the GEIR for eutrophication. I've read that one.
So, so those are the ones that we are committed to meet now, because we couldn't get the license from DEP otherwise. But I think if you'd like to add some language towards best management practices, I don't think Charles would have a problem with that. I mean,
no, not at all.
This is the club's goal now. They want to use the least amount of material that they can to keep everything healthy, but also because it's really expensive.
It is. And I will look into some mechanical harvesting and see in the fall and see how effective they are these days in managing that way, and what the costs would be to the club. I definitely would be willing to look at that.
Quick story. 25 years ago, I was down at the National Academy of Sciences attending a seminar on ecological engineering. And I turned to the guy sitting next to me, and I said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. He said, yeah, but if you're from Nebraska, ecological engineering, that's just farming every day, looking at your site every single day and knowing what to do next. And I said, wow, you've just given me a lot of things to think about. And that's what he's doing there at the golf course. You have to look at it every day
Absolutely.
because the variables, there are too many variables to predict what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
And that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it.
Wendy, it may be of little solace to you, but to the extent that they've already, as part of the license, committed to compliance with the DEP regs, what if we added language to say that they'll make, you know, good faith effort to reduce the use of chemicals in order to achieve the best management practices announced in, like the, whatever, Steve, whatever you just said you read. What a
Right. GEIR on eutrophication in ponds, right?
Right, there's two documents, a GEIR and a DEP guidance document.
Right, exactly. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does help make me feel a little bit better. I guess define good faith effort, though.
Well, I think, you know, here might be an approach to it, Wendy. I have a little more thought that maybe if we took, say, the 6 chemicals that are applied and started to establish a seasonal usage for each of the 6 chemicals, and by seeing the fluctuation, and I think I'm right on this, Dave, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but by seeing the fluctuation from year to year, that you'll know it. One year it might have been the lilies were out of control, or another year it might have been the algae that's just out of control. And I think with the fluctuation, you'll see that we don't just go in and blanket apply, you know, 1,000 pounds of each over 6 lakes. We pick and choose what we're using, and I think we'd all like to probably see that. I know Dave probably knows it because, like Steve just said, he lives it every day. He's on the course. He's in the field every day, which is our field. And I think if we put something like that together and we can show you the fluctuation in our usages, I think you'd be happy to see something like that. I know I would be, and I'd be happy to put something like that together to demonstrate that.
That would be great. I would very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And
Just
I'll
to
put it
clarify,
back.
there aren't 6 products.
Oh, whatever.
Okay.
Five
Yeah.
products. Yeah.
And I know that we'll be revisiting this again in 3 years.
Right.
Right.
And we'll have something for you to see then.
Yes, that would be great.
Good.
Because I will be here in 3 years.
I hope I am too.
Yes.
Right. Good.
This commission, John, how many years have you been here?
Oh, 28.
I was going to say, this is a place where people hang out.
Yeah.
Hey. Right. Well, so you know Dave well. Dave, how long have you been at the club?
8 years.
No, just a young guy.
Oh, yeah. With the 2 in front of it.
All right, so is that good if we add the language to the extension of the order conditions to include language along the lines of the golf course commits to the use of best management practices to achieve the goals set by GEIR and DEP guidance, and to work in good faith to reduce the use of chemicals?
Sure.
Yes.
Wendy, is that something you could live with?
Yes.
And
Thank you.
Kelly and Dave?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Can you put that down into English, Steve?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. And with that said, is there a motion to approve the extension of the order of conditions for an additional 3 years?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Aye. That's unanimous. All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Kelly, Dave, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
John. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.
Sure.
We've got 2 things left on the agenda. One is the tree policy, and the next one is 175 Governor Stoughton Lane. So I can step out or disappear for a while. You guys can vote.
John, that's going to be held over to July 14th.
Which one? 175?
Yes.
Oh, good. That's great.
Okay.
And so the tree policy, I think we should wait till we have more of a, more members present.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. I know, Jerry, you were interested in making sure this is on the agenda. Are you okay
That's,
with extending it?
that's okay because, you know, we should have more members here to discuss it. So, yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, and I know that Judith and Ingrid both have a significant, serious interest in the tree policy, so that makes good sense. All right, so the applicant is good to kick over 175 to extend until July?
Yeah, that was a request from the applicant, John.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And if we extend the proposed tree policy, then is there any other additional business?
Yeah, a little bit. First of all, we've received a $1,000 fee from Pulte for the, so that you can sign the order of conditions addendum on lot 2 of the estates, Woodlot Estates, okay? Number 2, you wanted me to add Carberry Estate, but I don't remember why.
Oh, because there's a letter in the packet. They're looking for an amendment or revision to the planning board approval.
Thank you.
Just in our packet, but there's nothing before us.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I looked at the plans they submitted, and it doesn't resonate with me because I can't tell where the wetland lines are, and I can't tell whether or not it impacts us or if it's jurisdictional to us or not.
I haven't seen those plans yet, but I'll be able to tell you very soon, okay?
Okay, fair enough.
I will take that as an action item as well. And let's see, I wanted to tell you 591 and 593, they've restarted that project, very nice. And to finish off, I wanted to tell you about something I saw at Cunningham Park yesterday. I was eating my lunch at one of the benches and I went over to take a look at the stream right by the water control structure there. I looked down into the stream and I saw tadpoles. So you can go out and take your children, grandchildren, you know, friends and significant others and take a look at tadpoles in a stream. Very rarely do you ever see that. The reason for that is usually in streams, they're all eaten by the fish. There were literally hundreds of them there.
Wow.
And it's also late in the season, so that must be a pretty cold stream as well.
It is a cold stream. Is that the stream were you like right behind the Girl Scout house?
No, I was on the other side of the pond where the pond empties.
Okay.
On the eastern side, right where the pond empties, there's a water control structure there with a little tiny, I don't know, you call it a little tiny bridge over it, I guess.
Right.
So you could work the gears. There's some gears that you have to work to close off the pond.
Oh.
Go right there. It's really interesting. It's just something very interesting. That's all to see.
We'll go check it out.
Does that mean, Steve, that there are no fish to eat them?
Most likely, that's correct. No fish
Go
in that
further down.
location. Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's just a fact. It's just, you know, one of those things that happens. There may be fish further down, but they may not be able to get up into that skating pond area, I call it. Okay. That's all. Very neat. It's very neat, actually. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Certainly.
I have something that I'd like to discuss. I went for a walk recently, last week along Pine Tree Brook, and at the end of Winthrop Street, I noticed that it looks like someone is dumping unwanted fill. Like there's two piles of gravel, there's a big pile of loose topsoil, and it's right by the brook.
Where are you? You said Winthrop Street.
Winthrop Street, yeah, off of Audubon. You know, Audubon kind of travels along Pine Tree Brook, and Winthrop is one of the little dead ends.
Dead ends, okay.
Okay.
So
It's
like
the one that's closest to Thatcher. It's one of the little dead ends closest to Thatcher. And there's several houses on that little dead end street, and the piles of debris look like they may be from one particular house, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. One thing that was also a concern was that people are parking at the end of that street, and truly there are cars like, I don't know, maybe 5-10 feet away from the brook, and I imagine they're staying there overnight.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
So they're parking on a public street.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm assuming that
Yeah, but there's
that
no
is.
overnight parking in Milton on the street.
What's that, John?
You're not supposed to park overnight on the street.
Yeah. That's a town
I thought you were allowed to.
bylaw.
I thought it was only prohibited during winter, from October,
If you have a
November
parking
1st
pass.
through March 1st.
I don't believe so. I think it's all year round.
Oh. I don't know. Oh, and the other thing is too, is that it looked as if someone had been using heavy machinery to disperse some of this fill along the trail that goes right along the brook.
What happened?
And like I could see.
I'm the only one moving around. Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if this was something that I should have brought to Steve's attention a week ago when I saw it, but I wanted to bring it up now.
I walk it every day. I'll walk down there tomorrow and take a look as well.
Thanks, Hon.
Sure, and I'll take a look,
Okay. And the other thing I noticed too is it's that path is used a lot by kids in the neighborhood, which is awesome. I'm so happy to see kids playing in that area. But one thing that is a concern is that it seems like kids are building forts in the knotweed and like trampling it down to little pulverized pieces, which made me think, oh my God, it's just going to be multiplying gangbusters, having them disturbing all the roots like that.
It's public access. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Wendy, I don't know the site very well. I'd have to take a look at it, but if they're pulverizing knotweed now, this time of year,
yeah,
is it the green or is it the dried brown and red that they're pulverizing?
Green.
It's the green. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the living shoots is what you're saying.
It's not flowering or in seed right now.
Exactly. And that's the point I was going to make. It's not, right now it's not a problem.
Okay.
In September it will be a problem. That's all.
Do we have a management plan in place for the knotweed there?
I don't know where there is, Wendy. Sorry.
It's yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being cryptic. It's basically, like, I'm looking at a little map here. Okay, so like I was at the end of Winthrop Street, and then it sort of dead ends on this path facing the brook, and I took a right, and I was heading towards Pope's Pond. Okay, and there's a pretty big stretch there. I would say that it spanned about, I think it was like between Grove Street and Gibbon Street, where it was really, there was a lot of knotweed. Like you couldn't see the stream at all.
Okay, so there's Winthrop Street. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
There's Winthrop Street there. Grove Street is the next one down. Sorry, go ahead, Hans.
So Pine Tree Brook Path extends from Lucas Parkway to Thatcher.
Right.
And it'll backs up to the high school. There's a number of stands of knotweed in there, and it is
Oh,
property
yes.
owned by the Conservation Commission. So the DPW was actually out yesterday mowing, but they only mowed the grassed areas. They didn't actually go into any of the stands of knotweed. But I'd say, you know, that's part of the conversation maybe we want to have with DPW and try to target some of those invasives while they do those mowing, because it would have been a great time to take some of that stuff down.
Yes, actually, it was Hillary Waite who told me about this area, and I walked it last summer, and said that the DPW had done some work trying to rid that area of, there's sort of like little basins there.
Yep.
A number of little basins along that pathway. They had tried to rid those areas of knotweed, so that is uppermost in their minds. So
Great.
trying to actively manage that area,
Mm-hmm.
which is great, which is really good. Yep, I now know where there is.
Sorry. I should have pulled up the map.
It's okay. It's okay.
There was one other thing. Just a point of curiosity. I was at Turner's Pond last weekend, and somebody had a wedding there. It was yeah, it was a beautiful thing to see. I honestly, I don't know if it was well, I don't know the details of the wedding. All I know is that it was very clearly a wedding, and they had like set up a beautiful like archway where apparently the ceremony was, and they were taking all kinds of pictures, and there was a lot of people there. And anyway, it just got me thinking, like, is that the kind of thing that people need to get a permit for? Like, would we have been notified if for something like that?
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec?
Yes, because Turner's Pond is under the aegis of Parks and Rec.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But it is conservation property as well, isn't it?
I'm not sure. There's not a lot of conservation property on it. It's Parks and Rec, because I know we went through that. Oh, that bird thing. Thank you for reminding me, Wendy. John, there's a couple of more forms you need to fill out and sign.
I think I did. I sent them to, is it Ben Phillips? Benjamin Phillips?
Yes, yes.
Kathy, yeah, I signed them last week.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. But I think for conservation purposes, I think the answer may be yes. I know that the DPW issues, you know, permits for street parties and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they issue permits for conservation. Do you know, John?
I don't. No, I don't.
Well, let me ask Kathy, right?
But I think the school department does, you know, for use of the high school field. Well, there are like public get-togethers, races for kids and all that.
Sure.
I think the school department does that, and I think the park department does as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, I've never heard of the Conservation Commission ever, you know, permitting notice of intent to get married.
Well, it was a wonderful thing to see, and it made me so happy to see the park being used like that.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I was a little concerned because they had jumped the confines of the parking lot, and there were several large SUVs really close to the pond.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. There were probably a few beer cans at the end of it as well.
Right.
I don't know about that, but you know, I was just thinking, well, it'd be nice to, you know, just be able to give some guidance for things like that, you know.
You
That's
bet.
true, and that might be a good question for Mike Dennehy. Yeah, I'll ask him. Oh, you know, we can ask Arthur Doyle now that now he's on.
That's right. We can ask Arthur.
He'll know.
You bet. Good.
Anything else under additional business?
I don't think so. I don't have anything. Anybody else?
Nope, I don't.
I have nothing.
I think we're good to go. So we'll see, we'll all meet 9 o'clock
Saturday.
Saturday. Where's our first one?
I've forgotten, and I've got to look back at my notes. My
This is
9
swimming
pages of
pool.
notes. What's that?
The swimming pool.
Yeah,
23 Harold Croft.
15
Harold
Ed-
Croft.
no,
Okay.
15 Edward is the first one. Isn't
No,
it?
15 Edward.
15 Edward, yep.
Yeah, 15.
And 23 Harold Croft, right.
Wait,
Very good.
wait,
All right.
Edward or Harold Croft?
What's that?
Are we meeting at 15 Edward or 23 Harold Croft?
15 Edward is the first one. On the,
Okay.
Yeah, and I will get you, you will have some, you'll have an agenda that Kathy will get you, okay?
Thanks, Steve.
All right, good.
Certainly.
Thanks, everybody. Long night, but substantive. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well-
See you Saturday.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night.